Part 48. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 483. Lu Chang'an cleaned up the big stove and used a snakeskin bag to cover the unburned charcoal so that it could be used next time. I took a book, sat under the sycamore tree and started flipping through it. What I was reading was Fenja's Song, a history of social life in the Song dynasty. The author's perspective is realistic song paintings, which examines various aspects of society at that time, showing the avant-garde of this era and its endless influence on future generations. For Lu Chang'an, it is precisely because of the experience that it seems more interesting, just like the diary written when he was a child, which retains the complicated feeling of carefully reading it in his old age. The times I have experienced have been too long, leaving only some people and things that left a deep impression, or some scenes that I feel are not very important, but I remember them inexplicably. After reading for a while, Shang Guandandan came back with the thermos pot in his arms. He put the thermos pot in the utility room and walked under the grapevine again. Lu Chang'an knew that she must have lost money, so he would come back and put away her precious thermos before going to play for a while. I don't know why, Shang Guandandan is only interested in tiles, but has not tried playing mahjong for the time being. After thinking about it, she probably felt that she was losing money too quickly because every mahjong game had to be settled. However, the tiles were scored and counted only when the number reached 100. What a comfort! She said she wanted to visit Lu Chang'an's university, but she didn't know if she wanted to enroll and experience modern campus life. Judging from her scheduled appointments to play cards with old men and women every day, she doesn't seem interested in studying. Will she live like this in the future? There was no common language. Lu Chang'an originally expected that after she stepped out of the coffin, she could reminisce about the past with him. Who knew that she was neither willing to talk to him about the past events of the Han Dynasty nor discuss the various trends of historical changes with him. Impact. Probably because Jiu, who entered the palace to become a queen at such an old age as Zhou Dongdong, has lived in a relatively closed environment within the palace wall since she was a child. She is more adaptable to living in an old community environment now. Lu Chang'an gathered his thoughts and read for a while. After losing the money, Shang Guandandan, who was a little lucky and satisfied with his foresight, came back. When he saw Lu Chang'an lying under the sycamore tree, he tapped his toes and jumped across the sycamore tree, sitting on a branch stretching out to the balcony on the second floor. The first time Zhou Dongdong saw you, you were sitting on a tree, Fengqi Wutong, right? Lu Chang'an looked up and saw her little feet swaying. Shang Guandandan nodded, that's what he meant. The heel of her shoe fell off, and only her toes were kicking the shoe. The round heel was delicate and small, and the fine lines on her skin were blurred as they dangled, making her skin as white and tender as a shelled egg. Why don't you wear the clothes I bought for you? Lu Chang'an didn't reject it when he saw her buying it, but until now, he has never seen her wear it. Today she is wearing a tulip frost white embroidered top. Changle's moonlight brocade skirt is also covered with a gauze dress as thin as smoke. After all, the weather is a bit cold, but this gauze dress is the kind of style in the museum that can be stuffed into a matchbox, and its cold protection function is limited. Because the clothes I am wearing now can remind you not to forget the days when we, mother and son, worked together. When you realize this deeply, I will wear something else. Shang Guandandan had a profound meaning. Lu Chang'an lowered his head to read. Shang Guandandan sat in the tree and watched him. I looked at the furniture in Zhang Sunli's ancient pictures around the fireplace and Qian Xian's appreciating ancient pictures. They are the Nordic minimalist style that is now very popular among young middle-class families. Lu Chang'an looked at it for a while and turned the pages. Shang Guan looked at it blankly. Shang Guandandan didn't have the knowledge or interest to pick up on the comparison between certain styles of Song dynasty furniture and modern furniture that he mentioned. Lu Chang'an's phone rang, and it was Yan Qingcheng who reminded him that there was a party tonight. Lu Chang'an originally didn't want to go, but Yan Qingcheng said that her mother mailed her some sweet potato scrapings and she would bring them with her, so Lu Chang'an thought she could go and have a look. Sweet potato slices are actually a specialty of southern Hunan. People rarely do this in other places. Select the best sweet potatoes, steam them, and then mash them into puree. Then use a shovel to scrape the sweet potato puree on the door panel that has been washed or covered with a cloth. It is best to use even pressure to ensure that the thickness of the sweet potato slices is even. It should be thin but not thick. Then cut the sweet potato slices into grids, expose the door panels to the sun, and put them away after the water dries. In the past, there were few types of snacks. Farmers in the countryside would make snacks like this after harvesting sweet potatoes from local materials. They would take them out and bake them on the fire in winter. They were more fragrant, chewy, and especially sweet. This is much healthier than fried potato chips and not as greasy. Come to the party with me, lest you get bored at home and I get bored too, Lu Chang'an said, looking at her dangling heels. I'm not bored, I can read novels. Shang Guandandan simply meant that Lu Chang'an had misunderstood her mood and state. Going or not? Go. Shang Guandandan jumped down from the sycamore tree, held Lu Chang'an's head, touched his cheek, and said softly, Mom will go with you. Lu Chang'an felt her soft belly and sighed, I'll be with everyone later, don't do this anymore. Of course, men can't appear to miss their mother's embrace too much outside, otherwise it will make people feel less manly and like a mother's baby. Shang Guandandan can understand Lu Chang'an's mentality. This is a man's vanity and self-esteem. Even mommy knows about it. Lu Chang'an shook his head, let's go. Shang Guandandan followed Lu Chang'an and walked out of the community. When they reached a position beyond the vegetable market, Shang Guandandan grabbed Lu Chang'an's sleeve and gently hooked Lu Chang'an's little finger with his other hand. Lu Chang'an lowered his head and glanced at Shang Guandandan's eyes, which were like those of a small animal in the forest. Then he raised his head and looked ahead silently. After all, she was just a little girl who came to a strange world. All her habits and indifference were only superficial, and her anxiety did not dissipate so easily. The place we went to this time was relatively far away for Shang Guandandan. Although the event was organized by Yan Qingcheng and Wei Xuanyi, Lu Chang'an felt that the reason why he could bring Shang Guandandan with him was because this event was a social gathering. Since it's a friendship, isn't it just to meet new friends? Lu Chang'an brought a beautiful girl to let everyone get to know her, so there was no problem in thinking about it. This time, I am not having a social gathering with a class from the same school, but a class from the normal university next door. I am also a freshman and is keen on such social activities. It just so happens that their class has more girls than boys, while the class in the School of Biology has more boys than girls. The gathering place was next to Yangui Lake. It was the place where Lu Chang'an sacrificed himself to save others in high school. It was also a class gathering that day, but it was just people from Lu Chang'an's own class. Although Yan Qingcheng reminded Lu Chang'an early, because Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan walked there, they were naturally the last to arrive. You are really slow. Yan Qingcheng and Lu Chang'an were already familiar with each other, so she complained naturally to Lu Chang'an, and then her eyes fell on Shang Guandandan who was hooking Lu Chang'an's little finger. We walked here, Lu Chang'an said. Yan Qingcheng understood that starting from the westernmost part of the university town and walking to Yangui Lake was not an exaggeration. After all, many people started from the university town and ran to Yangui Lake before returning. If they walked from Lu Chang'an's house, that would be too exaggerated. After all, they are all in the east of Hedong. This is your sister. Yan Qingcheng heard Lu Chang'an say that he was an orphan, but he had not heard him say whether he had any brothers or sisters. Relative. Shang Guandandan looked at Yan Qingcheng, an ordinary woman who, except for being tall, seemed to have no hope of becoming his daughter-in-law. But even for such women, men still have to maintain the attitude of a man in front of them. It is probably a very hurtful thing to bring your mother to a party, so Shang Guandandan doesn't want to tell the truth. The Queen Mother did her best in caring for her son. I didn't expect you to bring people here, but it's okay. Let's play together, little sister. How old are you? Are you in junior high school or high school? Yan Qingcheng asked enthusiastically. The little girl looked at people so much. It's funny, there is always a feeling that there is a lot of meaning in her eyes, but she doesn't want to tell you. Shang Guandandan didn't want to say that he was 15 years old, let alone over 2,000 years old, so he opened his mouth slightly and said, I am many, many years old. Yan Qingcheng burst out laughing and hit Lu Chang'an lightly. This little girl is so interesting. Sure enough, as long as there are people around Lu Chang'an, there is no one who is ordinary and unnoticeable. Of course, the most eye-catching thing was Shang Guandandan's beautiful appearance and luxurious clothes. Several girls from the normal university also gathered around, looking at Shang Guandandan curiously and enviously. She was a beautiful girl like a fairy. This is Lu Chang'an from our class, and this is his sister Yan Qingcheng introduced her. She didn't introduce Lu Chang'an in particular because these girls had asked her about Lu Chang'an before. It's not surprising at all, students they have the most time to scroll through social media. Like most middle-aged people in their 30s and 40s, they have the time and leisure to pay attention and dig out some gossip. You are Lu Chang'an, someone in our class knows Minister Yuan from your school. He always comes to our school to find one of our seniors, but you beat him up, and some people cheer him, a girl said to Lu Chang'an with a smile, and accompanied with passionate eyes. He looked very fond of him. He also wants to find my girlfriend. Lu Chang'an nodded. Since their gossip collection was related to Minister Yuan, it was not surprising to know that Lu Chang'an had a girlfriend. Just hearing what he said, the goodwill in his eyes restrained reservedly, and he stopped looking at Lu Chang'an and focused on Shang Guandandan. Let's go over first and get to know the other students. Yan Qingcheng pulled Lu Chang'an. Where are the sweet potato scrapings? Lu Chang'an said. Business. Yan Qingcheng pointed to the pile of snacks placed together. There were not many sweet potato slices. Yan Qingcheng couldn't take out all the ones sent by her mother. These things are for breakfast in the winter or if you are hungry and don't want to go to the cafeteria. It felt good to have a full stomach, so she took some to give some classmates in the city a taste. Lu Chang'an walked over and sat down with Shang Guandandan, and each of them took a piece and started eating. Is it okay? Lu Chang'an said to Shang Guandandan. Yes. Shang Guandandan lowered his head and nibbled, then squeezed Lu Chang'an and motioned for him to look at the other side. Sunangzia was actually sitting opposite them, holding a face-sized piece of sweet potato slices in her hands and nibbling on it. Sorry, I feel a little uncomfortable today. The outbreak has been interrupted for 1 day. There are still 5 days left for the Bianmen outbreak. In the next 5 days, there should be another 1-day outbreak. The weather is recurring, and Zaiwa is prone to colds and headaches. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 484. Many chance encounters in this world are all man-made arrangements. Lu Chang'an raised his head and glanced at the sky. He was not very interested in trying to figure out other people's intentions. He continued to eat his own sweet potato slices, and then he thought about a more in-depth idea. The problem. What kind of melons do people usually eat? The most commonly eaten melons are probably watermelon, cucumber, papaya, and sweet potato. Based on these 4 considerations, watermelon is too bulky unless it is sliced. It seems that it is rare to carry a piece of watermelon with you when watching the fun. Cucumbers are more suitable for eating at night, or people like Lu Yuang are keen on using cucumber cutters. As for papaya, the contemporary adjective is also very good. In this way, people who eat melons generally eat sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are sweet potatoes, and sweet potato scrapings are of course sweet potato slices. Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan ate sweet potato slices quietly in front of the melon-eating crowd, and did not intend to take the initiative to say hello to Sunangziu. In fact, the sweet potatoes in some places are cold potatoes. Jicama is also delicious, eaten raw, stir-fried, or stir-fried with meat, especially stir-fried with fresh meat. The soup is spicy, sweet, and delicious with rice. Why are other people chatting with enthusiasm and sincerity, as if they want to let the other party understand their strong desire to communicate, but we are the only ones here eating this food with concentration? Shang Guandandan nibbled out the top edge of the sweet potato slices. After making a crescent moon shape, he raised his head and looked around, and asked Lu Chang'an with some doubts. Because only eating and mating are the eternal instinctive pursuits of human beings. The pleasure contained in other behaviors is very short-lived. The longer people live, the more they understand and believe this truth, Lu Chang'an said to the fellow immortal but unexpectedly naive men, new teaching experience and insights. As expected of you, you are dissolute and immoral. Shang Guandandan nodded, not intending to argue with Lu Chang'an. After all, he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Lu Chang'an was just talking casually. When he looked ahead, he saw Sunangziu, who was wearing a lake green coat and a long skirt of the same color. She was gnawing sweet potato slices with difficulty and persistence, with a frown on her face, her pupils turning back and forth in her eye sockets. Go, looking back and forth between Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan. Sunangziu at least felt that the serious attitude of the two people sitting together and eating sweet potato slices in front of her seemed a bit harmonious and natural, which made Sunangziu not very comfortable. That girl of 14 or 15 years old was just too good looking, and her temperament seemed particularly noble, something that Sunangziu, who had met many people from all walks of life around the world, could hardly find in others. Age can't stop Lu Chang'an. Wasn't he just that old when he was taken away by Lu Chang'an for the first time? He didn't hesitate at all. Of course, it was not uncommon for girls aged 14 or 15 to become wives more than 100 years ago, but now it is not suitable. But if he wanted to, anything would happen. Sunangziu stood up with the sweet potato scraper in her hand and walked to Yangui Lake. He ignored her, and Sunangziu didn't plan to approach her for the time being. She would remain reserved for 30 minutes, or 10 minutes or so. The water in the lake is calm, and there is no vast momentum. The shallow water waves like fish scales are lively in the sun, and they are undulating endlessly. Maybe it is just that the wind is not calm and the waves are not stopping, which makes me feel uneasy. Sometimes I just look at the afternoon sun, the lake, and the wind, and every scene in front of me is unpleasant. Behind the scenes are the noisy social activities of boys and girls, the boys' passionate eyes and body language, and the girls' shy but hidden reserve of waiting for their heartbeats. It's really annoying. Miss Su, aren't you very adapted to such activities? Yan Qingcheng saw Sunangziu standing by the lake and thought that Sunangziu had no one to play with her, so he came over to accompany her. Most of the people here were 18, 19, and 20. The big brothers and sisters on the left and right heard that Sunangziu was only 14 years old. Although the word miss is often used in a joking and teasing way nowadays, it also depends on the occasion and the person being spoken to. With Sunangziu's temperament and background, such a title is natural and appropriate even among ordinary students who have little sense of class. It's okay. Sunangziu stretched out two thin fingers from her sleeves and tugged at the hem of her coat. Her brows softened, like distant mountains being smoothed by an ink-soaked pen on a scroll. I want to take good care of you for your cousin. What do you like to play? Yan Qingcheng said enthusiastically. Originally, after Yan Qingcheng used sweet potato scrapers to lure Lu Chang'an to participate in this event, she felt that Zhu Huntang would probably also participate. Who knew that after talking to Zhu Huntang, she promised well, but she still let go today. She said she wanted to play with some saint from the 9 provinces Fenglai sword section. Yan Qingcheng didn't ask or study more. Zhu Huntang said it is normal that things are difficult for normal people to understand. Zhu Huntang did not come. She recommended her cousin over, saying that her cousin was also a student of Hunan University, but she was young and had a generation gap with her classmates. She was usually autistic and hoped that Yan Qingcheng would take her to play. Yan Qingcheng also didn't expect that although Zhu Huntang's cousin was a student of Hunan University, her actual age was only 14 years old. Her cheeks and figure looked more mature, so she looked 15 or 16 years old at most. Many high school students were doing this in private. Even if she dresses up daily, she looks much more mature than she looks. Just sometimes when you look at her from the side, or accidentally meet her eyes, the feeling is completely different. There is no childishness at all, but something cold and almost fierce. It's cold in autumn and my heart is dry. I want to drink black chicken and ginseng soup. Su Nangxiu casually handed the sweet potato slices in his hand to Yan Qingcheng. Yan Qingcheng was stunned for a moment, but she took it smoothly. Then she realized that this was the style of a young lady. If she didn't want to take something in her hand, she would naturally let others hold it for her. It was not for Yan Qingcheng to eat. Mean. Seeing Su Nangxiu walking towards the trestle, Yan Qingcheng quickly followed. As the organizer of the event, she had of course paid attention to safety matters. A new warning sign was erected by the lake, mentioning many safety precautions and even giving examples. A student from the middle school affiliated to Shonan University once fell into the water due to the collapse of a trestle. Another classmate who was not good at swimming sacrificed himself to save others, but both of them were almost entangled in water plants and died. Fortunately, the other 3 students actively rescued and saved the day. I hope everyone will take this as a warning, pay attention to your own safety, and never swim or play in the water. Yan Qingcheng didn't look carefully. At this time, Yan Qingcheng stopped and took a look at the example below. She couldn't help but be stunned. Isn't this Lu Chang'an's high school? There is something in his file about him sacrificing himself to save others in high school. Could this be his business? It feels amazing. What are you looking at? Su Nangxiu asked casually when she walked onto the trestle and saw Yan Qingcheng standing there reading the warning sign. I have a classmate who sacrificed himself here to save others and was commended. Yan Qingcheng looked at the warning sign, smiled and pointed back to Lu Chang'an, who was still sitting there eating sweet potato slices. Su Nangxiu glanced at Lu Chang'an's back, then walked back to read the words on the warning sign, and then sneered. Do you think such self-sacrifice to save others is worthy of commendation? It is open to discussion. Apart from this, Yan Qingcheng did not think that Su Nangxiu had any other reason to sneer. Are you sure Lu Chang'an did this? Su Nangxiu asked instead of answering Yan Qingcheng's question. Yan Qingcheng hesitated for a moment. That should be the case. There is indeed a record in Lu Chang'an's file that he sacrificed himself to save others and was commended by the school and the Department of Education. If he is not the person mentioned here, that is possible. Sacrifice yourself to save others, almost got entangled in water plants and died. Su Nangxiu knocked on the warning sign. What a drama queen. Why did you say that to him? Seeing Sun Nangxiu walking towards the trestle again, Yan Qingcheng followed him unconvinced. People nowadays are accustomed to believe that those who fall into the water and those who are rescued often have their own responsibilities. They are often giant babies, or ignore some rules and regulations, or have weak safety awareness, causing injuries or even sacrifices to the rescuers. Therefore, he is full of anger towards these rescued people, and then repeatedly reminds everyone to protect themselves, and it is not worth sacrificing oneself to save others. There are many debates here, and Yan Qingcheng is not paying attention to this, but as a matter of self-sacrifice at this time, why is he, a hero who saves people, laughed at indifferently by onlookers? Do you like Lu Chang'an? Su Nangxiu still didn't answer Yan Qingcheng's question, but turned around and looked into Yan Qingcheng's eyes. These eyes are like how Lu Chang'an sometimes feels to others, as if he wants to see into other people's hearts, It's just that Lu Chang'an can really see through people's hearts, while Sunangzio's eyes are more aggressive, and make people involuntarily resist. No, Yan Qingcheng quickly denied it. She didn't expect that someone would actually think so, which made Yan Qingcheng blush. From the earliest time she came into contact with Lu Chang'an, Yan Qingcheng felt that everyone would think that she only came to Lu Chang'an for class activities and would not misunderstand her. When she really wanted to take the initiative to contact Lu Chang'an, Yan Qingcheng's mentality changed, and she also felt that everyone will her mentality change and think she has a crush on Lu Chang'an. Girls often think a lot about these proportions and details, leaving boys unable to figure out their attitudes that change like the weather. Sunangzio's eyes swept over Yan Qingcheng. A girl like this who looks warm and easygoing has a lot of strength and self-esteem hidden in her heart. She is used to hiding her emotions. It's too much for her to admit that she likes someone. It is almost impossible for a boy to be outstanding, or to be a boy who is not in the same world as himself. Unless this boy takes the initiative to pursue her and makes her feel the most sincerity, eliminating her hesitation and distrust of everything brought from life, she will basically not reveal herself. True intention. It is impossible for Lu Chang'an to pursue Yan Qingcheng. He is a dedicated man who only likes super beautiful girls from beginning to end. My relationship with Lu Chang'an is okay. Yan Qingcheng saw that Sunangzio didn't say anything and thought she didn't believe it, so he quickly explained, because his father knows my mother, and I have carefully understood his character. In fact, he's just a bit arbitrary, and he's not really a school bully like the school rumors say. He's still a pretty good person. Yan Qingcheng thinks that Sunangzio must have heard of Lu Chang'an's reputation, but the strange thing is that Sunangzio is Zhu Huntang's cousin. Since they are from a wealthy family, they are also close friends with Lu Chang'an, and Zhu Huntang and Lu Chang'an play well. Doesn't Sunangzio not want to know more about Lu Chang'an? But, it's not surprising. As the saying goes, a sister-in-law is a half-assed brother-in-law, but in fact there are many sister-in-laws who hate their brothers-in-law. Sunangzio looked at Yan Qingcheng carefully, his eyes sweeping from the top of Yan Qingcheng's head to the insteps of her feet. Yan Qingcheng is over 1.7 meters tall and has a tall figure. Except for An Nuan, most girls have to look up at her, but Yan Qingcheng feels that Sunangzio is looking down on her. There is a in the little girl's eyes. The meaning of that's it made Yan Qingcheng confused. Lu Chang'an's father is called Lu Jianxi. Sunangzio's eyes twitched. From Yechinayu to Lu Jianxi, this person's naming can still follow the pace of the times, but this change in painting style has always made Sunangzio uncomfortable. After all, my young master Ye has always looked like a handsome and troubled young man, but once he was reincarnated, he could actually transform into a person wearing a safety helmet, sweatshirt, shorts, and Jafang shoes. Although Lu Jianxi is also a professor with many achievements and a low profile, Sunangzio doesn't think there is anything wrong with him taking some of Professor Liu's research results. He doesn't want them anymore and pretends to be dead. He is what's wrong with a widow taking away her husband's research results. What's wrong? Where is wrong? You also know. Yan Qingcheng was a little disappointed. She always felt that it was better that others didn't know this. She shrugged and Yan Qingcheng laughed. I heard that Professor Liu is actually low-key, but his professional level was extremely high, and there were many experts and scholars who supported and admired him in the relevant professional fields of that era. There are even more female students who admire him. Sunangzio's eyebrows had a hint of coldness as she still looked at Yan Qingcheng. Isn't it bad to talk about elders like that? Yan Qingcheng's smile was a little stiff at first. Hearing the sarcasm in Sunangzio's words, he became even more angry, so he restrained his smile and reminded politely, at that time, who can explain things clearly? If those who know the truth don't speak up, then others should not jump to conclusions. I'm just saying that there are many female students who admire him. What's the problem with that? Sunangzio looked at Yan Qingcheng strangely. Girls tend to admire teachers who are capable and charming. If the teacher has many special things, full of mystery, which makes girls easily curious about him. Isn't this kind of admiration normal? Then you should say that you admire his students. You specifically emphasized the female students. I always think you have something to say. Yan Qingchen is more willing to believe that she has misunderstood Sunangziu. Although Yan Qingchen has no feelings for Professor Lu Jianxi, she didn't know much, but she believed in her mother. A person could make another person miss him for many years. There was definitely something worth remembering about him. Sunangziu was still looking at Yan Qingchen. Her eyes fell on Yan Qingchen's eyes and long eyelashes, and finally withdrew her gaze. The Yan Qingchen in front of her reminded her of Zhongqing back then, but although Zhongqing a little shorter than Yan Qingchen, but with a better figure and a more refined appearance. You also said, who can say clearly what happened at that time? You have your own opinion, but it does not necessarily mean that my opinion is a rash conclusion. Sunangziu looked at Lu Chang'an's back not far away. He was looking at pulling Shang Guanduntun along. He grilled a slice of sweet potato on the barbecue. Shang Guanduntun was looking at Lu Chang'an and the barbecue, and from time to time he made a gesture of wanting to hold something but forgetting to bring it with him. Action. We'd better not talk about this topic. People who lived there didn't want to talk about it, so why do future generations have to speculate? Yan Qingchen didn't want to argue with Sunangziu, and looked back at Lu Chang'an. He didn't know if Lu Chang'an knew what Sunangziu thought. Would he? He will be angry. Maybe he will just slap him like he did to Minister Yuan and Lin Feng. Probably not. Sunangziu is a super beautiful girl. Lu Chang'an's attitude towards super beautiful girls is only to tease, take her to the hotel, play with her wantonly, and let the super beautiful girl be captured physically and mentally. For example, one night Qinyanan and Zhu Huntang were in the hotel together, and they even posted a selfie. I'm afraid Lu Chang'an is Lu Jianxi's son. So since your surname is Yan, and you like to defend Lu Jianxi, I guess you are Yan Hui's daughter, right? Sunangziu looked at Yan Qingchen for so long, and still relied on observation and logic to conclude, came to such a conclusion. Just by looking at her appearance, there is really no way to tell that Yan Qingchen is the daughter of that little foxy Yan Hui. After all, Yan Hui is not only much more delicate in appearance than Yan Qingchen, but her figure should have been more mature when she was young. It is impossible to look like the color is so plain. However, the feeling of being healthy and energetic, with strong leg shape and hip line between the two is quite similar. Comparing this, Yan Hui back then was more like an Nuan now. The aesthetics of the old man in his family are really consistent, and Nuan also has bulging breasts in a Chong Sam, while Yan Qingchen can rely on support. Squeeze underwear is also difficult to save. How do you know my mother? Yan Qingchen was surprised. She originally thought that Sunangziu was not Lu Chang'an's family friend like Zhu Huntang, because she didn't seem to know much about Professor Lu Jianxi. But she didn't expect anything more. Probably due to prejudice, she not only knew Professor Lu, but also knew her mother's name. Of course I also know that your mother was implicated by Professor Lu. After graduation, her job assignment has been delayed. Later, she only became a rural primary school teacher. Although her life was worry-free, it was definitely not very comfortable. It won't be easy to train you. Sunangziu sighed softly and looked at Yan Qingchen with pity. Sunangziu's gaze was hard for Yan Qingchen to accept. Yan Qingchen raised her head proudly. You don't have to look at me like that and think I'm pitiful. Although my mother and I depend on each other, we don't need other people's sympathy. We have our own to be happy. Not everyone needs to live like you to be happy. If you think so, that's great. I still underestimated Yan Hui. She raised such a daughter, which is enough to show that she had more than just youth and beauty that attracted Professor Lu. Sunangziu smiled. He smiled and didn't care about the stinging meaning in Yan Qingchen's words. It was a matter of course for a person who cared about his own self-esteem to instinctively put up the spikes all over his body to protect himself. Let me say it again, my mother only worshipped and admired Professor Liu, and there was nothing like you think between them. Even now, when my mother talks about Professor Liu, what she admires is still Professor Liu's talent and character. Have unique personality charm, not something between men and women. Yan Qingcheng looked at Sunangxiu angrily. Don't think of the friendship between men and women as the same thing. Sunangxiu didn't take it seriously. Girls of this age are always a little naive, just like you are attracted to Lu Chang'an without knowing it. This is just an ordinary classmate relationship, so you can't help but pay attention to Lu Chang'an, a Lu Chang'an. To build such a professor, in that era, for a female student full of expectations and fantasies about the future, how could you imagine his attraction to her? Human nature is not reliable. Human nature is not so conscious to maintain beautiful simplicity. Human nature is accustomed to struggling with selfishness and possessiveness. In the end, most of the thoughts of complying with one's own desires win. Even if Yan Hui can recognize a simple and intimate teacher-student relationship. The relationship is not bad, but her desire will definitely defeat her reason, and she is eager for further development, or in fact, further development with him, that is rational, haha. I'm optimistic about you, but Yan Qingcheng like this reminded Sunangxiu of Zhongqing again. Training a girl is always a very interesting thing, not to mention that Sunangxiu didn't want Yan Hui to go through what Yan Qingcheng had to go through again. Go through it again, because Yan Hui has the capital to seduce Lu Jianxi, but Yan Qingcheng does not. Yan Qingcheng was stunned for a moment, not sure why. Do you want to be my assistant? Sunangxiu extended the invitation. No, Yan Qingcheng shook her head instinctively. You don't know what you missed. Sunangxiu didn't insist on persuading Yan Qingcheng. If you miss some things, you will never have a chance. This is not suitable for Sunangxiu. Isn't double standard the axiom of this world? Sunangxiu walked off the trestle, and Yan Qingcheng was lost in thought for a while, feeling that these young ladies were indeed a bit difficult to understand and get along with. In comparison, Miss Zhu Huntang was easier to get in touch with. Obviously Zhu Huntang is the cousin, but Sunangxiu seems to be much more mature, and Zhu Huntang's temperament and personality have the characteristics of a wealthy lady. In fact, she is not bad-minded, as long as she doesn't have bad intentions or covet her, and is used to her kind of talk and doing things is actually quite easy to get along with. Sunangxiu was different. Yan Qingcheng felt that she would rather be bullied by Lu Chang'an like Minister Yuan, Lin Feng, and others, than have more contact with Sunangxiu. Assistant. Yan Qingcheng intuitively believed that she had escaped a dark crisis in her life. Are you thinking too much? Yan Qingcheng shook her head. She really liked to think wildly. Hello everyone, it's the last few hours of this month. For Xiaohua's monthly pass, the third update of the Silver Alliance outbreak is out. Expired monthly tickets are wasted. If you vote for Xiaohua, they can be turned into delicious food in Zhou Dongdong's bowl. Give the Zhuzhu Fenglai sword sex saint some face. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 485. Sunangxiu didn't care about Yan Qingcheng's rejection, just like she didn't care about whether Yan Hui's trip in life was something Yan Hui had to bear. Everyone's destiny is changed by inadvertent choices, and they should be responsible for it. Either accept it or fight it. There is no point in blaming others. The moment Yan Hui met Lu Jianxi, her fate changed. If she had nothing to do with Lu Jianxi, it can only be said that she chose to miss it, just like Yan Qingcheng today. Sunangxiu walked back and saw Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan already eating roasted sweet potato slices. I haven't made this for a long time, because raw sweet potatoes are quite expensive in supermarkets and wet markets now, Lu Chang'an said to Shang Guandandan. The sweet potato slices brought by Yan Qingcheng also included sesame seeds, some people will add tangerine peel, or chili peppers, etc. Now some people also add dried meat, but this dried meat contains very little water, otherwise it will not be easy to preserve. It will taste better after roasting for a while, but I want to eat meat buns. Shang Guandandan tore the soft sweet potato slices in his hand into strips and stuffed them into his mouth. Lu Chang'an looked at her small mouth. Her lips were opening and closing one by one, and she quickly sucked in a whole piece. She was obviously eating very quickly, but it still gave people the impression that she was maintaining an elegant and generous posture. Yes, I really don't know how she did it. Compared to the past, the world has made great progress in terms of food, both in terms of the sophistication of ingredients and the development of cooking methods. For example, the pork we ate back then was not as delicious and tender as it is now. Lu Chang'an lamented about human civilization. In fact, pigs are a profound trace of the development of human civilization. No other animal has ever provided humans with more industrial raw materials than pigs. The whole body of the pig, including the hair, fat and bones, has extremely wide industrial value. Sometimes, being a useful person like a pig is really a high compliment. Everyone should feel sincerely proud when they hear someone praise them for being like a pig. Will Zhou Shuling make meat buns for me tonight? Shang Guandandan didn't care about the pork issue and still looked at Lu Chang'an expectantly with his head tilted. How do I know? Lu Chang'an continued to eat sweet potato scrapings. The annoying thing about Shang Guandandan is that she has a question. Before you answer her, she will not be able to listen to what you are saying to her and will always be obsessed with it. This matter. The meat buns made by Zhou Shuling are so delicious. She is more useful than your other wives. Shang Guandandan rolled up the sweet potato slices and made them into a shape like meat buns, then stuffed them into his mouth bit by bit. My girlfriend's name is An Nuan. If you embrace her, you will feel safe. If you stay with her, you will feel warm. Remember, Lu Chang'an pulled Shang Guandandan away from the stove because someone else was coming to use it. Shang Guandandan just continued to think about his own things. Coincidence. Sun Nangxiu came down from the trestle and was walking under the willow tree when she met Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan. Shang Guandandan had just stuffed all the sweet potato slices rolled into the shape of meat buns into her mouth. Although her mouth was full of food, she didn't let her cheeks bulge, and it was impossible for anyone to see her entire mouth. They are all squirming lively. The Queen Mother has extremely high skills. Every encounter in life is the result of tens of billions of years since the birth of the universe. Coincidences are coincidences, but nothing good. Lu Chang'an smiled. You guys have met before, so I don't need to introduce each other. Shang Guandandan nodded and said nothing because she was controlled by the sweet potato scraper. What I can't understand is that this makes people, nothing. This girl who looks 14 or 15 years old, she claims to be your mother, this has always been something Sun Nangxiu found extremely ridiculous. It's just that this absurd feeling and the curiosity generated by it are not as important as Lu Chang'an himself. So Sun Nangxiu didn't waste time asking about Sun Nangxiu when they met Lu Chang'an alone last time. At present, it seems that it is difficult to persuade Lu Chang'an to have a child with him, which is extremely important to science, humanity, civilization, and the couple. Then Sun Nangxiu is in the mood to focus on other things. As an expert who has spent most of his life immersed in the study of life phenomena, Shang Guandandan is very mysterious, second only to the mystery of Lu Chang'an. In other words, Sun Nangxiu is more curious about Shang Guandandan at this stage. After all, Lu Chang'an is an independent biological species. Sun Nangxiu already has a little understanding of him. He is even her husband, so the fog that surrounds him is still there for now. It's not as clear as Shang Guandandan. Sun Nangxiu knew nothing about Shang Guandandan, except for Shang Guandandan's invisible sense of oppression over Sunangziu, as if the king of the forest was looking at the little beasts on the food chain when he inspected his territory. Why? Even Lu Chang'an didn't give people such a feeling. Sunangziu did understand this aspect. Lu Chang'an suppressed, and restrained his original rank. He didn't know how many thousands of years he had been trying to live like a person. The strange Shang Guandandan, the strange Lu Chang'an, Sunangziu had to admit that when these two stood together, the usual jealousy and sourness in her heart would be suppressed a lot. Since she calls herself, "Why do you care?" Lu Chang'an asked Shang Guandandan not to mention this matter. Sunangziu obviously didn't realize that Lu Chang'an didn't like this very much. Shang Guandandan pinched Lu Chang'an's little finger and asked Lu Chang'an to look at her. Lu Chang'an didn't look at it. Shang Guandandan's habit of look at my eyes and understand the meaning yourself was developed in Vyang Palace, and it seems that it won't change for a while. What is the relationship between her and you? Sunangziu didn't believe this either. Shang Guandandan, like Sunangziu, looked about the same age. Who knew his true age? But Sunangziu observed that behind Shang Guandandan's aura, there was indeed a girlish appearance. Lu Chang'an also has a problem. He likes to carry a little girl with him. He used to like to take Yesijin with him, but is this the one he likes to take with him now? On the surface, these little girls have no intimate relationship with him. What is her relationship with me, and what is her relationship with you? Lu Chang'an spoke gently, turned his head and pointed at Yan Qingcheng. I have nothing to do with her, please don't bother her, okay? Sunangziu glanced at Shang Guandandan, who was silent, and then turned to look at Yan Qingcheng. She saw a boy wearing a DK-style uniform who was looking for Yan Qingcheng with a smile and talking about something. Yan Qingcheng turned around inadvertently and saw Sunangziu and Lu Chang'an looking at her. She thought that these children from aristocratic families knew each other, but she didn't know why they were looking at her. Could it be that the topic they were talking about was related to her? It felt a little strange, but a smile appeared on his face and he walked over. The boy also followed. Let's get to know each other. This is Qin Tianlai from the Normal University. Yan Qingcheng noticed that Qin Tianlai had followed him and introduced him out of politeness. Although Yan Qingcheng felt that given Sunangziu and Lu Chang'an's temperament, they probably had no interest in getting to know anyone else. The two of them didn't look very close and familiar, but their styles were somewhat similar. Qin Tianlai showed a familiar and generous smile. My name always reminds me of Wang Tianlai in Country Love Story, so I usually suggest that you call me King Tianlai. Sunny Qing, isn't it more poetic? Are you making fun of the people in southern Hunan who don't distinguish between front and back nasal sounds? Lu Chang'an said with a smile. He is also a warm and generous person, not at all what Yan Qingcheng thought. How can you? I am also from southern Hunan. Qin Tianlai waved his hand quickly and glanced at two girls of 14 or 15 years old, looking a little shocked. Are these two your sisters? They look like she's so beautiful, she will definitely be a super beauty in the future. Yan Qingcheng glanced at Qin Tianlai. Qin Tianlai looked at the two little girls without showing any inappropriate expression, but who knows? Nowadays, there are so many perverts, and there are also a lot of Lolita fans. I occasionally read some online male channel novels on the internet, about loli cultivation, and there are many old men who are reborn and go back to chase little girls in junior high and high schools. Men, don't take these creatures too seriously. Qin Tianlai is actually Yan Qingcheng's suitor. Yan Qingcheng is not interested in him, but he will inevitably think that Qin Tianlai is a bit stupid. She, Yan Qingcheng, is not a girl with good looks to begin with. Since you are pursuing or, he praised other girls as super beauties in front of her. Is this implying that Yan Qingcheng is not good looking enough? Regardless of whether he meant it or not, it was a bit stupid to say such a thing. I'm his wife. Sunangziu glanced at Qin Tianlai coldly. What she hated most in her life was her sister. What's more, if he regarded her as his sister, wouldn't she become Yesigen? Nausea. After Sunangzio finished speaking, she ignored the stunned expressions of Qin Tianlai and Yan Qingcheng, turned around and left, boarding an old Rolls-Royce Phantom that had been parked by the lake not far away. We broke up many years ago, Lu Chang'an corrected Sunangzio's statement. Yan Qingcheng stared at Lu Chang'an dumbfounded, and then glanced at Shang Guandandan, who was silent there for some reason. Have you swallowed the sweet potato scrapings in your mouth yet? Lu Chang'an also lowered his head and glanced at Shang Guandandan. Shang Guandandan nodded. The food must be fully tasted before it can be swallowed. If it is just for the sake of swallowing, what is the difficulty? Shang Guandandan was in a dilemma because she wanted to taste the food and keep her mouth shut so that no one would notice that she secretly filled her mouth with food. Let's go, I'm going to sing. Lu Chang'an saw that Shang Guandandan couldn't open his mouth to speak, so he wanted to do something that would allow him to sing wildly. Shang Guandandan jogged a few steps to keep up with Lu Chang'an, then grabbed his finger, holding up his skirt and jumping briskly and lively. Recommended book. I can see the status bar. Sun Lin, a doctor who had just started his career, wanted to be an excellent doctor, but when he came to his senses, he found that he had become a failure. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 486. Yan Qingcheng and Qin Tianlai stood on the ground and looked at each other. This was the first time that Qin Tianlai and Yan Qingcheng looked at each other like this. Although this kind of look had nothing to do with the goodwill between men and women, it was just pure surprise. Qin Tianlai was even more sure at this time. Yan Qingcheng was indeed not as good as the two 14-year-olds just now. The 5-year-old girl is beautiful and delicate, and her temperament does not have that extraordinary elegance. However, as an ordinary female college student commonly seen on campus, such appearance, such long legs, and such a sense of vitality are all deeply attracted to her. After all, as soon as they see two girls who are obviously not suitable for college students but are very good looking, they are ready to give up on the pretty good people in front of them. It is rare in reality to suppress unrealistic evil thoughts. Choose something more in line with your own goals, which is a more rational attitude. Who has no evil thoughts? Those who can suppress it are normal people, but those who cannot suppress it or even act recklessly are evil people and perverts. Yan Qingcheng quickly looked away from Qin Tianlai. She just made sure that she was not the only one who was shocked and speechless. She looked at the leaving black car. Yan Qingcheng didn't know the differences in the various styles of luxury cars, but this model with the door opening direction opposite to that of ordinary cars really suited Sunangzio's temperament. Am I his wife? These are the words of a 14-year-old girl, so confident, so serious and full of resentment, as if she has really experienced marriage and betrayal, the kind of person who proudly refuses to humble herself in the face of a cheating husband. The head begged, but still showed love and reluctance in his eyes. This is a first-class actor born to be in love and marriage dramas, right? What's even more incredible is that Yan Qingcheng thought that Lu Chang'an would be as dumbfounded as him, horrified by Sunangzio's ridiculous words. How could he know that Lu Chang'an not only did not deny it, but also proved it from the side, probably saying, our relationship is indeed like this, but there are some twists and turns. You can go into details, but I don't want to say more because it has nothing to do with you. Oh my God, who are these people? Lu Chang'an's image had already been rebuilt, but Yan Qingcheng didn't know how to protect him in her heart. Are they joking? Qin Tianlai asked tentatively. How do I know? Yan Qingcheng resisted the urge to send Zhu Huntang a message and warned herself not to meddle in her own business. Curiosity was not suitable to play a role in initiating her behavior in the current interpersonal relationship. Yan Qingcheng knew that she and Qin Tianlai were shocked differently. Qin Tianlai was shocked beyond belief, but Yan Qingcheng was shocked that Lu Chang'an's lower limit on matters between men and women had been further set. Not only did he bully and humiliate his cousin and counselor, He also coerced and controlled Qin Yinan's best friend Zhu Huntang, and even the 14-year-old Sunangzia was not spared, and this Sunangzia was Zhu Huntang's cousin. He is using the relationship chain of the beautiful girls to nibble away at them one by one. I am afraid that other beautiful girls who are friends, besties, or relatives with Qin Yinan, Zhu Huntang, and Sunangzia will not be able to escape Lu Chang'an's clutches. He must have controlled these three girls while asking them to prepare more prey for him. Yan Qingqing's heart was beating fast. She felt that the fear of being dominated by evil made her blood boil and her whole body trembled slightly. Should she be glad that she did not fall into Lu Chang'an's eyes? After imagining it for a while, I couldn't imagine it. Yan Qingqing staggered towards the lake. She wanted to calm down. It must be a joke. How old is that little girl? It's ridiculous to talk about a wife. The same goes for your classmate. He also said they were separated for a long time. Doesn't that mean they had a special relationship a long time ago? Then we should call the police. Jin Tianlei, I said, following Yan Qingqing. Yan Qingqing washed her hands in the sink by the lake, poured water on her face to calm down, and said angrily, "Why call the police? I was joking." Yan Qingqing wouldn't be so nosy and call the police. Qin Yinan and Zhu Huntang are both under his control. Will they still accuse Lu Chang'an? No, Qin Tian was only talking about Sunangziu. Sunangziu herself said she was Lu Chang'an's wife, so the police wouldn't come to arrest Lu Chang'an? What's the use of calling the police? At this time, they heard Lu Chang'an singing, which was a rented portable karaoke. Lu Chang'an was the same as the last party. He only sang and ate, and was not concerned about the nature of young people's social activities. Also, if there is no boyfriend/girlfriend, who would be so active in participating in one social activity after another? After all, the fantasy that you must fall in love once in college still takes a certain amount of time to be shattered. It is a more common phenomenon that many people go through college without ever falling in love. Before the fantasy is shattered, there is always a strong one. Power. For a person like Lu Chang'an, there is no girl worthy of his whole routine in such a social event. Including Yan Qingqing herself, Yan Qingqing clearly realized this, a little lucky and a little unhappy. Lu Chang'an sang one song after another. Although the equipment limited his performance, it didn't make anyone feel annoyed. What's more, everyone's mind was not on singing. "Let's play a song," Lu Chang'an said to Shang Guandandan. "Everyone will take this black and thick stick and spit, and it will be close to the lips, and even touch the lips or even teeth when singing unintentionally. You can do this disgusting thing yourself, and I would advise you not to visit your daughters-in-law after you have done this." This is tantamount to indirect exchanges of spit between them and countless people. Shang Guandandan took 2 steps back in disgust, even though she was still swaying just now. He kept pace with Lu Chang'an's rhythm. When people in ancient times sang, they also played time, which was more professional. Lu Chang'an looked at the microphone in his hand, looked at Shang Guandandan, and silently put down the microphone. There are many things that cannot be seen but revealed. Although Lu Chang'an felt that what Shang Guandandan said was unreasonable, he had lost interest in howling. Usually he attacks other people's interests and hobbies from this angle. "Then let's continue eating sweet potato slices," Lu Chang'an said to Shang Guandandan. It could be seen that she had already chewed everything in her mouth. Shang Guandandan had no objection and raised his hand to hold for Lu Chang'an. She always took the initiative to hold his finger. Wouldn't he take the initiative to take care of her appearance needs? Lu Chang'an hit the back of her hand. Shang Guandandan followed him glumly. After eating the scraps for a while, they felt that it was no longer interesting, so Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan were ready to go back. Yan Qingqing wrapped up the remaining sweet potato slices and handed them to Shang Guandandan. Shang Guandandan hesitated for a moment, glanced at Lu Chang'an, and found that Lu Chang'an had no intention of catching it for her. He stretched out his hand and hooked the plastic bag with one finger. I know you have no fun playing, so I won't keep you here. Yan Qingchen was polite and apologetic. The politeness is polite, but there is something inexplicable about it. Lu Chang'an nodded without saying anything. He knew what Yan Qingchen was thinking, but there was no need for Lu Chang'an to explain anything. For people like him, it is never his loss if he misses or misunderstands. Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan left. Several girls chased after him and gathered around Yan Qingchen. They sighed that the little girl was really good looking and that the boy had a pretty good temperament. Yan Qingchen was a little confused. Just now, if people are here, why don't they take the initiative to get to know each other and have a chat? After walking out of the Yangui Lake area, Shang Guandandan no longer hooked the plastic bag with his fingers, but hugged it in his arms. He said to Lu Chang'an hesitantly, "There are still 10 yuan here, let's take half of it each." "Quite fair," Lu Chang'an nodded. "How about $6 for me and $4 for you?" Lu Chang'an glanced at Shang Guandandan and nodded. "Can I get $7 and you 3? Enough is enough." "May I?" "No." "Oh." As the two of them were walking, they saw Sunangzio's car lying across the lawn in the scenic area along the river. A large piece of the yellowish turf turned up, revealing the dark brown soil underneath. The tires scraped shocking marks. You can see there was a huge dent on the side of the car. I looked around and saw that there was no impact vehicle, no remaining parts or debris from the impact, and no carcasses or blood of wild animals. It is very common for wild animals to appear and crash into cars in many places, but it is quite rare in Juncha. The suburbs of such big cities are densely populated, and the most large wild animals are wild boars. However, Juncha has not heard of it for many years. There have been reports of wild boar sightings. Sunangzio stood expressionlessly on the pedestrian walkway in the scenic area. The river breeze blew across her face, blowing her long hair away, revealing her fair and tender neck. "This big car has been hit," Shang Guandandan raised his head and told Lu Chang'an as if reporting, while taking out a piece of sweet potato scraper and started chewing it. Lu Chang'an was not blind, and Sunangzio was blocking the aisle, so Lu Chang'an greeted his acquaintance and asked, "What's going on?" "Wild boar," Sunangzio replied simply. Wild boar. Lu Chang'an looked at this elongated Rolls-Royce that had definitely been reinforced and modified. Such a heavy behemoth could actually be hit and moved several meters sideways and rushed onto the lawn. "What kind of wild boar is this?" "A wild boar as big as an ox, extremely fast, with incredibly thick skin and incredibly thick flesh," Sunangzio continued. "It's a cow, right?" Lu Chang'an was confused, "but a cow doesn't have such strength." "A wild boar as big as a cow, and I'm not blind." Sunangzio didn't look very surprised. Since she can transform people, she has naturally done animal experiments. Animal mutation experiments are less troublesome than human mutation experiments. What about the wild boar? Nowadays, wild boar is very expensive and sold well. If you meet Lu Chang'an on the road, you will inevitably have the idea of picking it up and inviting everyone in the community to have a whole pig feast. He rushed into the river and disappeared. Sunangzio pointed to the surging river in front of her. Lu Chang'an couldn't help but laugh. He just thought this kind of thing sounded interesting. A wild boar as big as an ox hit a car and fled across the river. "I have an accident, and you can actually laugh." Sunangzio looked at Lu Chang'an in disbelief. "I can't believe that when I burned my finger before, you would hold it in your mouth in distress. That happened more than 100 years ago, and you still mention it." Lu Chang'an looked at Sunangzio. "Don't you have nothing to do with it? Women just like to be hypocritical. A vampire who has lived for hundreds of years was almost killed by you, and was on the verge of death. Can a wild boar hurt you? How do you know there's nothing wrong with me? I suffered internal injuries." Sunangzio's indifferent expression disappeared. She turned around and glanced at Shang Guandandan, who was standing nearby eating sweet potato scrapings and watching the fun, and felt a sense of sourness in her heart. Didn't you like to check my body the most before? Could you please check me for any internal injuries? At that time, I was using the name of physical examination to popularize Western medical knowledge and the mysteries of the human body to you. Now that you have the knowledge and research level in this area, you can become my teacher. Examining internal injuries is something I won't show my embarrassment. Lu Chang'an shook his head. Thinking of the past, Sunangzio felt sweet and sad at the same time. Everything in the past had turned into smoke and dust. When he mentioned the past in front of him, it seemed that he was just telling stories from that year, not his memories mixed with tenderness and sweetness. Then I will be your teacher, and you can learn about Western medical knowledge and human body structure from me. Sunangzio's cheeks were slightly red. She was no longer the girl who was wantonly reserved and proud because of being favored. Think about it, this world is small after all. The foxy girls are more favored. Can't I make this change? Of course, being unscrupulous is not just for treating others. If a person is really ruthless, he must be ruthless to himself. We don't need to study like this anymore. It's no different from playing house. Lu Chang'an was not interested. Don't you want to know how I can change my body shape? A woman can look like 14 or 15 years old, as young and pure as a bud to be destroyed by you. Sunangzio came over, stood on tiptoes, breathed out with her lips slightly open, and whispered in Lu Chang'an's ear, she can also be 18 years old, embodying the best imagination of mankind, even surpassing your warmth and beauty. It's like flowers just picked from the greenhouse are blooming. Of course she can also be in her 20s, mature like Chinyanan's little vixen. Every part of her body seems to have a texture designed to adapt to the caress of your palm. Sunangzio looked at Lu Chang'an's brows and listened to the sound of his breathing. She gritted her teeth and felt cruel in her heart. These women she was using now would eventually be driven away from his heart in the future, but now, she could bear it for a while. Just angry. If your taste has changed now, I can handle an old woman like Lu Yuang. I can even add a little fine lines at the corners of the eyes to make the MILF's charm more in line with what she should look like. Sunangzio, how could you not notice Lu Yuang when you came to Xiongda University? It's just that Sunangzio has not carefully investigated Lu Yuang so far. Even Sunangzio feels that this woman's care is a bit contrary to time. The only pity is that I probably won't be able to play in Nuan and Lu Yuang at the same time, but it is not difficult to make a completely mimicking robot. Sunangzio's lips parted slightly, the tip of her tongue curled up, and she exhaled like a blue, I have every look I like. Lu Chang'an turned his head and looked at Sunangzio calmly. The corners of Sunangzio's mouth were slightly raised, with a teasing smile. Although she could do it, she also wanted to see his heartbeat. How could a man escape such temptation? Even if it's him, even if he refuses, he still has to plant seeds in his heart. These seeds will sprout in the future and will remind him of the scene she described when he gets tired of An Nuan and other women. Once a seed germinates, it will grow and take root. Play with me. Her eyes were like water, and this charming look might be a bit deliberate, but he must be able to feel the tenderness and sweetness in her eyes, and there was no fakeness. You have every look I like, Lu Chang'an smiled. But this smile, just like the clouds have faded and the wind has become lighter, it disappeared without a trace in an instant with a look of regret. Sumei, you have exactly the kind of look I like. You don't have it anymore. Lu Chang'an pushed her fingers away. Now she was forcing herself to look like she was giving up her pride and reserve to cater to him. It really shows that she doesn't understand anything. I liked you at the beginning because of who you are, not because I need you to become something else. You have lost the person I once liked. No matter how you change again, I won't like you any other way. Sumei stared at Lu Chang'an blankly. Her heart seemed to have been hit hard by something, as if the wild boar that escaped across the river came back and bumped into her slender body. Lu Chang'an looked at her. He was not a heartless person, otherwise he would not have kissed Sumei on her forehead at the Zhu family. It was just what she had done in the past that Lu Chang'an could not care about, but she was no longer what he liked. She still has a long life, and they may meet again in the future, but it has nothing to do with the relationship between men and women. At this time, the nearby river was rolling, and Lu Chang'an finally saw the wild boar as big as an ox, rushing towards the shore from the water. Such a big wild boar must have revived its spiritual energy. Shang Guan gnawed on the sweet potato slices and sighed loudly. She didn't pay much attention to what the evil woman and daughter-in-law were talking about, so she naturally discovered the wild boar immediately. Hello everyone, this is the fourth major chapter of Silver Alliance, but today it is 1000 words less than the normal major chapter. It will be made up tomorrow. Xiahua suffers from a disease that makes her feel like she will die if she doesn't have a monthly vote. I hope everyone, considering that I am one of Zhou Dongdong's feeders, will give me some monthly votes to prevent me from dying. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Can Ru Xiahua. Chapter 487. The wild boar was so big that Shang Guandandan slowed down his gnawing of sweet potato slices as he watched this wild boar, which should symbolize the revival of spiritual energy, rush out of the river. Its fur is covered with splashing water, its toned muscles bulge with strong lines, its unruly eyes are full of wild wantonness, its strong and reliable limbs like jacks have left deep concave hoof prints on the river bank, its thick neck and the leg muscles have exciting explosive and collision power. Such a huge beast is like an emperor who dominates the world. No wonder it can easily knock away the Rolls-Royce blocking its path with a trampling and crushing force. Roar. The wild boar's thick neck shook, and it let out a roar that shook the mountains and rivers, and rushed toward the shore like electricity. Lu Chang'an didn't expect it to rush towards him. He was startled and quickly punched it in the head, killing it. Shang Guandandan dropped all the sweet potato slices on the ground, because she was thinking just now that the wild boar was so majestic and wondered if it could replace Lu Xin as Zhou Dongdong's mount to take her to school. She didn't know that Lu Chang'an was so rude, and she couldn't help but feel lucky. When he snatched her pony carriage to play with, he did not kill her pony, nor did he dismantle the pony carriage. The sweet potato slices fell to the ground. Shang Guandandan quickly picked them up. After looking at them, he couldn't help but feel very sad. After touching them, he stuffed them into the mouth of the wild boar lying on the ground, with only the muscles and limbs nerve reflexes shaking. Why did you just kill it like that? The most unacceptable thing was Sunangziu. She was reflecting on what she had lost. What was the difference between her current self and her former self? That air of sorrow, as if she was staggered with his punch, was shaking in her heart and no longer firmly dominated her current mood. Lu Chang'an ignored Sunangziu and bent down to observe the huge wild boar. Big. Quite big. Sunangziu said that it was a wild boar as big as an ox, but that description was not very accurate. After all, there was a huge size difference between oxen and oxen. The wild boar in front of me is comparable in size to the largest Asian buffalo, and its muscles and body lines are more like those of a white-limbed bison. The muscle lines of this white-limbed bison are very beautiful, unlike the Belgian blue and white cow, which is like a fitness enthusiast taking injections. Such a big wild boar has been missing for a long time. Even Lu Chang'an felt that it had been a long time. The earth at that time was completely different from now. In a sense, the revival of spiritual energy mentioned by Shang Guandandan was really a bit like that. The flavor of the times, of course, cultivating immortality does not exist. Such a mutated species should be kept alive to study the causes of its mutation, the current body structure, cell status, and DAN data. You smashed it to death. As a former expert in the biological field, don't you know the value of a living body? Far more than a dead thing, Sunangziu felt that Lu Chang'an was really more difficult to understand than before. The reason why she was still standing here after the wild boar hit the car was because she had sent people to search for this animal in the upper and lower reaches of the Xiangjiang River. There are traces of a wild boar, and she wants to catch it in the laboratory and study it. She likes to collect all kinds of mutant creatures, and she is not only interested in human mutations. Why should I decide the meaning of my actions based on your needs and thinking? Lu Chang'an waved his hand. If you are really interested, you can collect specimens now. How could Sunangzio carry collecting equipment and storage containers with him? Looking at the blood flowing on the ground, Sunangzio can tell that the blood in this wild boar has a very high oxygen content and has super explosive energy, far exceeding that of ordinary wild boars. Sunangzio had no choice but to ask the driver, who was standing not far behind him, to inform people to come and collect the specimens. The driver looked panicked. He was not shocked by Lu Chang'an's punch, just because he did not react quickly when the wild boar showed signs of charging. Come here, it can be said that you have failed to fulfill your security responsibilities. What he said was right. He really had no reason to act according to her position and perspective, but after all, it was just because he didn't like her. If he had her in his heart, he would not act arbitrarily on his own. He had to realize that she wanted to how to do. Is this the revival of spiritual energy? Shang Guandandan had the opportunity to speak and looked at Lu Chang'an expectantly. Lu Chang'an originally didn't want to answer such a question, but she was Shang Guandandan, a woman who would keep repeating the same questions if you didn't answer her. No, Lu Chang'an didn't look at her directly, letting her figure it out on her own. He looked back at the other side of the road, where there were also signs of collisions with hedges and landscape strips. If we follow these traces and look forward, we will see that in that direction is Elephant Bai Wo Mountain. Yangui Lake is not far from Elephant Bai Wo Mountain. It is a straight line here, and there are not many dense residential areas and commercial areas in the middle. Why isn't the spiritual energy revived? Shang Guandandan was disappointed. He took out another scraper and started eating it. He held the bottom of the scraper tightly with both hands. Don't you remember that someone almost had a mutation this afternoon? Lu Chang'an did not say Zhu Huntang's name. Shang Guandandan understood. She was the Queen Mother after all, and there was someone she needed to guard against. She could also quickly understand that Lu Chang'an didn't mention Zhu Huntang's name. Anyway, she was guarding against this evil woman. It seemed that she could no longer be a wife. Shang Guandandan had already changed the label he had placed on Sunangzio in his heart. Shang Guandandan could see that Lu Chang'an would not deliberately guard against the women he liked. For example, Qin Yinan and himself, and even Zhu Huntang, sometimes refused to talk to others about certain things because they just felt that the other party did not understand them well. For example, Zhou Shuling and others were not out of precaution. It turns out it's not the spiritual energy that has revived. It's such an unlucky pig. Shang Guandandan felt very regretful and instinctively wanted to touch and comfort the dead wild boar, but she forgot about it. She wanted to hold on to her own sweet potato scrapes. Sunangzio looked at Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan slightly suspiciously. They didn't seem to be very surprised about the mutation in the wild boar. They even seemed to know the reason. So Sunangzio also followed Lu Chang'an's gaze and looked at Elephant Trunk Mountain with a thoughtful expression. Lu Chang'an stretched out his finger and drew a line on the wild boar. The tight wild boar skin burst open, revealing the tight and smooth muscle texture inside. Lu Chang'an then drew a line on the muscle tendons, and the bright red color of the cross-section was even. It exudes an alluring aroma that usually only comes from stewed pork bones. Are you checking its muscle strength? Sunangzio looked at Lu Chang'an's movements and asked. I'm looking to see if it tastes good. Who cares about muscle strength and the like? Lu Chang'an doesn't have much interest at the moment, and he doesn't lack such research materials. If he had his own research room now to facilitate research, then he probably wouldn't kill this wild boar, but he doesn't. Are you going to eat it? Sunangzio looked at Lu Chang'an in surprise. This is just like when ordinary people see a panda that is so cute, but suddenly someone comes over and cooks the panda into a barbecue, stews it, or even cooks it without saying a word. A sashimi-like feeling. Eating the killed prey is a virtue and respect for life. Of course Lu Chang'an has his own reasons. Can't you just take it back to the laboratory for research? Sunangzio felt that even if it was already dead, its research value would be greatly reduced and many experiments couldn't be done, but it would still be more valuable than eating it, right? No, I killed him, and he is my prey. If you want it, you should take action before me. Lu Chang'an disagreed. Well, since it is your prey, it hit my car before. Since you want it, you have to bear the responsibility for it hitting my car. Otherwise, it should belong to me and be used to compensate me. Los Sunangzio had no choice but to reason with Lu Chang'an. Tell me, is this the truth? Okay, Lu Chang'an is also a reasonable person. You can ask Zhu Huntang for money another day. Just say that I should compensate you, and she will give you the money. Sunan was so delicate that she couldn't speak. She couldn't help but look up at the Bailong Center in the extreme distance to the northwest. If there was a hole in her forehead now, it must be purple smoke from the sunshine incense burner. Miss Xiao Tang is so rich, can she play mahjong for 10 yuan? Shang Guandandan asked enviously. Mahjong for 10 yuan is a phrase that old man Qian often uses to brag. He said that after playing mahjong for 10 yuan, others would look at him with envy. Sunangzio took a deep breath to calm down her emotions. At this time, another identical old Rolls-Royce Phantom drove over from her backup car. Sunangzio stopped saying hello to Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan, and the motorcade drove away quietly. As people live longer, their lifestyles become different. Do you want to live like me, or like Sunangzio? You can play as much mahjong as you want. Lu Chang'an watched Sunangzio's motorcade disappear into the night. In the middle, he turned to Shang Guandandan who was holding the scraper and asked. I will live with you. Shang Guandandan had no emotion and continued to chew on the sweet potato slices in his hand. Lu Chang'an reached out and scratched Shang Guandandan's head. Shang Guandandan frowned. How could he touch the Queen Mother's head? So rude. Lu Chang'an called old man Qian. Lu Chang'an, is your brother's car free? Don't worry, I won't make you unlucky. I killed a wild boar, and I told you the address. You let him come with the car, it's really cool. Lu Chang'an called and waited for the bus with Shang Guandandan. Occasionally, pedestrians passed by and stopped to watch. After a while, there was a circle of people. Fortunately, old man Qian's brother was running around here and came over soon. Lu Chang'an and Lu Chang'an they worked together to pull the wild boar into the refrigerated truck. The car arrived at the community, and there were already a dozen old men and women gathered at the door. Led by old man Qian, as soon as they saw the car drive in, a group of people quickly followed them, cheering, heckling, and greeting Lu Chang'an. Old man Qian had already stopped. The news that Lu Chang'an shot the wild boar spread. Even Zhou Shuling is back. Lu Chang'an got out of the car and saw Zhou Shuling. Why are you here? Because Zhou Shuling looked very active and prepared to do something. Uncle Qian said you shot a wild boar and asked me to come back and help kill the pig. Zhou Shuling's cheeks were flushed with excitement. Forget it, Lu Chang'an didn't need help in the first place, seeing how proactive she was. Shang Guandandan looked at Zhou Shuling and then at his own hands. Do you want to help with the work? Forget it, her hands were now controlled by the sweet potato scraper, and she couldn't let go. There was really no way. The back door of the refrigerated truck opened, and everyone immediately stretched their heads to look around and couldn't help but exclaimed. This is a wild boar spirit. Where can there be such a big wild boar? I'm afraid Marshal Tianpeng will be captured by you, Chang'an. Don't say stupid things, this is a cow. Pig. Have you seen the horns? Old man Qian waved his hand and said in an awe-inspiring manner, this is a wild boar, you have never seen it before. The wild boar came down the mountain to destroy the food. We young guys formed a food protection team to kill the wild boar. Later, the wild boar king came down the mountain to take revenge. Even though the wild boar king was so big, he was killed by us, but the key was my shot. Stop bragging. Such a big wild boar will run in front of you, and you will be scared to death. Yes. Yes. Old man Qian's face turned red and he shouted loudly. Lu Chang'an pulled the wild boar down, and the car shook. Suddenly no one was arguing about the issue just now. This pig is just brain dead. I bled it and killed the pig to sell its meat. If you don't have money, go back and get the money. If you have a mobile phone, you can pay with your mobile phone, Lu Chang'an shouted and said to Zhou Shuling, bring a few basins, and, you're responsible for collecting the money. Zhou Shuling hurriedly twisted her butt and ran upstairs to get the basin, because she had to hold pig blood, various organs, etc., so she didn't need a scale. Lu Chang'an's hands were famous for being accurate. He used to sell dog meat, and his hands were once you catch it, you can trust it if it says how heavy it is, everyone will go home and weigh it, and I don't see anyone saying it's missing a pound or two. Wild boar, it's rare to eat freshly killed meat. Hurry up, your hands and feet will be gone later. No wonder someone else old man Qian helped to shout business. He felt that he was quite authoritative, and a few shouts could make Lu Chang'an's business good point. Little brother, I won't accept the fare. Can you give me some meat? Old man Qian said to his brother with a smile. No problem. Xiao Lu is easy to talk to, old man Qian said to Lu Chang'an again, I'll cut off half a catty more. Okay. Old man Qian was very satisfied, he still had some dignity. Wild boar has lean meat under its skin, almost no fat, and a strong odor. It's just that this wild boar is a bit special, with almost no odor, but no one doubts that this is not a wild boar, because they are all very old, and everyone I know that domestic pigs cannot be so strong and huge, as if the hair and steel needles are inserted into the flesh one by one. The most important point is that the health value of this wild boar far exceeds that of ordinary ingredients. Ordinary wild boar is suitable for stewing and eating in a dry pot. It has a strong smell and is not suitable for clear stew. It has a very nourishing effect on the elderly and children. Lu Chang'an knew very well why the wild boar had mutated, so there was no need to leave it to Sunangxiu to study. As expected of Zhu Huntang, the abnormal phenomenon that occurred in Zhu Huntang was the first to find the same situation in a wild boar. It's just that Zhu Huntang's mutation was suppressed, but this wild boar didn't have such luck. If it hadn't had the mutation, it probably wouldn't have rushed into the human world and would have lived well. Whether it was the changes in Zhu Huntang or the wild boar, they were all caused by the small drop of blood that Lu Chang'an squeezed out that day. Zhu Huntang was probably the only human being affected that day on Elephant Trunk Wo Mountain. As for other creatures, Lu Chang'an was not sure how many there were. There were probably rats as big as local dogs, rabbits as big as domestic pigs, and other such creatures. Phew! If we catch them all, there will be more than enough preserved meat for the Chinese New Year. After selling the wild boar meat, Zhou Shuling was calculating the money in cash and WeChat. Even though the restaurant's income was high, she still showed the happy expression often seen by a housewife, and clicked her fingers on the calculator. As for the pig's blood, keep it fresh while it's fresh. I have to quickly use it to make pig's blood meatballs. The pig's blood meatballs I ate when I was a kid always had more tofu and less meat, or just some fat meat. Now I'm going to make them put a lot of fresh meat and put a cooked egg in it. Zhou Shuling looked at Lu Chang'an expectantly, hoping that he would agree. After all, he is the one who has the final say on how to eat and cook. Okay, you go ahead and mix the pig blood with salt and mix it well, keep some of it out, and cook some pig blood to eat tonight. This is a supplement. Lu Chang'an had no objection. It was a matter of course to kill the pig and keep the pig blood to make pig blood balls. Pig blood meatballs, also called pig blood cakes, are a traditional dish in Beijing and Luxiang in southern Hunan. Every year when the weather gets cold after autumn, every household begins to make this food. It is eaten during the winter solstice and 12th lunar month during the new year. It has a long history and traditional methods. It is also very particular. The key is that the roasting after making is related to whether the aroma of the pig blood meatballs is attractive. The pig blood meatballs purchased online often lack that kind of smoked aroma because they are mainly made in ovens, and the method requires using various kinds of rice husks, peanut shells, melon seed shells, even orange peels and some aromatic ingredients to mix together to make the taste more distinctive. Put the rest in the refrigerator first. Fortunately, Miss Jean had the foresight to prepare a super large refrigerator for you. I'll go and tidy up the big refrigerator first. Seeing that it was time for her to show off her skills, Zhou Shuling happily went to work. She is really a good woman who is suitable for running a house, Shang Guandandan commented while standing leaning against the sycamore tree. Lu Chang'an nodded. Without evaluation, she would only evaluate others. She could not do anything herself, or she felt that she had done her best. At this time, Zhu Huntang finally sent Zhou Dongdong back, because it was already past dinner time. Zhou Dongdong had already eaten and drank enough, and his cheeks seemed round and bulging at any time. Brother Chang'an, did you kill Lu Sin? Zhou Dongdong ran over in a hurry, hugged a wild boar leg and prepared to howl. No, I really killed a pig this time. Lu Chang'an pointed to the bottom of the stairs. When Lu Sin heard Zhou Dongdong's voice, he ran out shaking his head, walked around Zhou Dongdong several times, and excitedly stuck out his tongue to lick Zhou Dongdong's hand. Only then did Zhou Dongdong hug Lu Sin with confidence, his beloved dog. Dogs are the cutest. Has your cousin been looking for you? Lu Chang'an asked Zhu Huntang by the way. Zhu Huntang withdrew his eyes from Lu Sin, chuckled again, and gave Lu Chang'an a meaningful look. Lu Chang'an didn't try to be curious or understand her inexplicable behavior, he just asked again. No, why is she looking for me? Zhu Huntang shook his head. This cousin, how should I put it? I like her a little bit, I should say I appreciate her, but Zhu Huntang doesn't play with her much. There is an indescribable feeling about this cousin, which always makes Zhu Huntang feel a little pressured. My pig hit her car, and she asked me to pay for it. I told her to ask you for money. Lu Chang'an still wanted to say hello to show his courtesy. She's not so stingy, is she? Zhu Huntang waved his hand nonchalantly. It's okay. I'll say hello to her and ask how much it will cost. I'll just compensate her. Zhu Huntang has the self-consciousness of a little fat sheep and doesn't care about wiping the sect leader's mess. Thank you. Lu Chang'an nodded. Then I want to be the protector of the Saint of the Nine Provinces Fengling Sword Section. Bamboo Protector. Haha. Zhu Huntang happily patted Lu Chang'an's shoulder, because this was an action full of heroics, and she was no longer a minion. Don't get used to patting me, especially don't pat me on the shoulder from behind in the future, Lu Chang'an kindly reminded her. Zhu Huntang quickly ran behind him and patted his shoulder. Lu Chang'an ignored this little expert in seeking death, and went upstairs with a pig leg and pig blood. There was no way, he couldn't let Zhou Shuling do the work. He and Zhou Shuling were the only ones who could work here. Lu Chang'an went upstairs and then downstairs, and saw Zhou Dongdong holding another pig leg and dragging it hard, while Lu Xin bit the pig skin to help. Lu Chang'an glanced at Zhu Huntang and Shang Guandandan but said nothing. Shang Guandandan hesitated for a moment. She had already finished eating the scraper, so she looked around, picked up the kitchen knife Lu Chang'an used to cut meat, and took it to the room downstairs. She never came out again. Dong, come on. Come on Lu Sin. Zhu Huntang also felt that he should do something, so he ran over to cheer Zhou Dongdong and Lu Sin. Lu Chang'an sighed. Mud can't hold up the wall. The supporting characters are just supporting characters. They only exist to set off the hard-working quality of the protagonist. After playing for a while, Zhu Huntang received a call. Zhongqing informed her that she was grounded again and asked her to go back quickly. Fortunately, this time, it was only for 3 days. Zhu Huntang was confused and very angry, but there was nothing he could do. Did his mother have early menopause? Because today's wild boar meat didn't have the smell of mutton, Lu Chang'an took a piece and stewed it for a while, stir-fried it in hot oil, and then made some green onions and pig's blood. He and Zhou Shuling made do with these two dishes. Zhou Dongdong had already eaten, but he still insisted on eating a little with Lu Chang'an and Zhou Shuling. After eating, he and Lu Chang'an watched TV together. Lu Chang'an was originally going to help Zhou Shuling make pig blood meatballs, but Zhou Shuling had to prove her skills and asked Lu Chang'an and Zhou Dongdong to watch TV together. Zhou Shuling brought pig blood and pots and dishes and placed them in the living room. She sat on a small stool, making pig blood balls and watching TV. After working for a while, she saw that Zhou Dongdong had climbed up to Lu Chang'an without knowing it. Sitting in his arms, her head resting on his arm, both of them were watching the childish cartoon intently. Zhou Shuling couldn't help but smile. She feels so happy now. Life is like this, and she has been content with it for a long time. It's really unbearable. I know why those people who always introduce partners to themselves always like to treat Zhou Shuling as if you are not happy now, you are worthy of sympathy now, and I really want to help you. If you are not a fish, how can you know the joy of fish? Zhou Shuling no longer remembers the sentence, but some people don't understand it even if they remember it, and some people don't remember it, but they understand it themselves. After watching TV for a while, Zhou Dongdong fell asleep, and Lu Chang'an sent her upstairs to sleep, because Zhou Dongdong was no longer a child in the first class of kindergarten, and the 6-year-old Zhou Shuling found it difficult to hold her, so she usually stayed there when someone fell asleep downstairs. Lu Chang'an would send him up. I'm always troubling you. Zhou Shuling was still making pig blood balls and was almost done. No trouble, Lu Chang'an said politely. Why are you so polite? Zhou Shuling was stunned for a moment. Then why are you so polite? Zhou Shuling smiled and hit him. This man was really annoying. Lu Chang'an disliked the oil on her hands, so he washed his arms and then began to process the remaining pig waste and meat. The next morning, Lu Chang'an put the pig blood meatballs made by Zhou Shuling on a pile of orange peels and started to smoke them. These orange peels were the leftover peels from eating oranges in the past. People of the older generation who know how to live well know that orange peels are a kind of food. Good stuff. It can be made into tea, or you can soak it in water and eat it if you have a slight cough, lung heat, or cold. If you use it in excess, it is also very delicious when used to make smoked bacon and pig blood meatballs. Of course, Lu Chang'an is also an older person who knows how to live a good life. Take some to An Nuan's house to eat. Zhou Shuling chopped the pork thigh meat and put it in a plastic bag and handed it to Lu Chang'an, reminding him not to forget it. Lu Chang'an sells wild boar meat. In fact, he mainly wants to supplement the old men and old ladies. An Nuan and Lu Yuwang have no need to do so. He has never thought about it, but Zhou Shuling's reminder makes sense, so Lu Chang'an carries the plastic bag. Went to An Nuan's house. The autumn sunshine is perfect today. An Nuan and Lu Yuwang are sitting on the balcony. Lu Yuwang is arranging her flowers and plants, and An Nuan is knitting a sweater. Oops, my hand was pricked by a knitting needle. An Nuan suddenly cried out in pain. Lu Yuwang glanced back and continued to use the sprayer to spray the flowers and plants until they looked wet and nice. Lu Chang'an didn't even see it. I want him to feel sorry for me when he sees it. An Nuan regretted that Lu Chang'an was not around when he was injured. Then you have to take a picture quickly and show it to him, otherwise it will be ready in 3 minutes, Lu Yuwang kindly reminded her. An Nuan rolled her eyes and glanced at Lu Yu. The special notification sound on her phone went off. An Nuan glanced at the message and immediately felt extremely proud. What a tacit understanding. The mark of being pricked on her hand might really be there in 3 minutes. He was gone, but Lu Chang'an was already at the door of the orange garden, and he appeared in time to act coquettishly for En Nuon within 3 minutes. En Nuon quickly put away the knitting needle and wool ball, then hurriedly opened the door and prepared to act coquettishly. The 5th update of Silver League's explosion. Today's chapter is really big. Please vote for me to continue Xiaohua's explosive power. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 488. En Nuon opened the door and ran down the steps, and saw Lu Chang'an walking over in the shade of the trees on both sides, walking at a steady and slow pace as always. No matter how you look at this scene, you feel comfortable. Every time you see him walking like this, his steps seem to be stepping on the rhythm of her heartbeat, tightening and relaxing, squeezing out a lot of softness in her heart. So En Nuon raised the back of her hand straight up, placed it next to her waist and hips, and swung it up and down as she ran, running to Lu Chang'an's side with a cute look. Why are you walking like this? Lu Chang'an thought of Zhu Huntang yesterday. When he asked her to come over, she ran over like this. It turns out that this is not Zhu Huntang's unique way of pretending to be cute. This makes me look cute, En Nuon pouted and shook her hands again, imitating the penguin's movements. Looks like a retard. Maybe Lu Chang'an saw En Nuon do it first and thought it was cute, but Zhu Huntang did it first, and his preconceptions changed his feelings. En Nuon was about to act coquettishly, but she was offended by his sudden blow. She kept her posture like this and threatened aggrievedly, "I'll give you a chance to reorganize your language." How can this be reinterpreted? Even Lu Chang'an felt a little embarrassed. I mean, it looks like my IQ has been activated in love and I have the appearance of a cute girl without any obstacles. Lu Chang'an nodded. Mental retardation has many meanings, but when it comes to the mild mental retardation of a girl in love, performance, and small actions, that's what he meant. Everyone thinks so. That's pretty much it, En Nuon said proudly. Your reaction is very cold. You should go on to say that I am cute all the time. I was not satisfied again. Enough is enough. Lu Chang'an didn't tolerate her. I wanted, En Nuon always looked very majestic in front of Lu Chang'an, but she took a sneak peek beforehand to see if he was really impatient. Let me tell you, I'm not afraid of you. I'm just afraid that you'll be endlessly annoying and I'll have to coax you in the end, which will make it even more annoying. Lu Chang'an had to make her understand this point. Then you are still afraid of me? Bother. You have to like me even if I'm annoying. Lu Chang'an pulled her back to prevent her from acting like a spoiled brat endlessly. Just after entering the door, En Nuon took a look at her mother's bedroom and said to Lu Chang'an delicately, I just learned to knit wool and planned to knit a small clothes for a cute puppy, but my finger was poked. With that said, En Nuon raised her fingers to show Lu Chang'an. Fortunately, I came in time. It will be a little late, I'm afraid the leg will be amputated. Lu Chang'an looked very frightened and cooperated very well. What nonsense are you talking about? Although his answer was too exaggerated and showed no sincerity of concern, En Nuon couldn't help but laugh out loud. If he also said something like I'm afraid it's okay, it would mean that he and his mother had too good a tacit understanding, and En Nuon would be angry. Lu Chang'an held her finger and bit it gently. Feeling that it touched his tongue, En Nuon's cheeks turned red. She shyly pulled her finger back and said angrily, aren't you afraid of getting my finger dirty if you suck it in your mouth? Don't be afraid, you look delicious, Lu Chang'an said with a smile. Chang'an, come here. Lu Yuang could clearly hear En Nuon holding her fingers to act coquettishly at first, but then he pricked up his ears and couldn't hear clearly, so he hurried out to take a look. This is also human nature. Sometimes when someone eavesdrops on a gossip and they don't understand clearly, they just pretend to be a chance encounter and go to the gossip scene to gain a sense of participation. I shot a wild boar yesterday and brought some wild boar meat here. Lu Chang'an raised the plastic bag in his hand. Lu Yuwang took it with a smile. This is good, wild boar meat, it must be pure natural. Lu Chang'an watched Lu Yuwang take the wild boar meat and put it in the kitchen. And Nuan turned his face away. There was nothing she could do about it. Professor Liu's back was too charming, so she could only stop him physically. We couldn't expect these men to be pure in heart. Lu Yuwang was wearing a tropical-style gauze skirt today, tied diagonally around her waist. She was as light as her name, and she lived up to her name. Having a wild boar, does that mean you killed a wild boar? And Nuan knew that her boyfriend was unconventional and not like a normal person, but this guy grew up in Hedong and went to school in Hexi, not in the mountains and forests. Isn't it ridiculous that an ordinary college student who has lived and never learned art from an Aryan actually killed a wild boar? Of course, otherwise you think it was hit. Did I mean to hit it like this? Lu Chang'an hit the finger that An Nuan pointed at him. This is my injured finger, and Nuan retracted her finger and walked around Lu Chang'an angrily, pulling him to look left and right. Are you okay? Why do you always do such dangerous things? Hitting a wild boar, why are you making such a fuss? Do you think everyone is like you, indifferent to the 4 limbs and the 5 grains? Have you ever seen a wild boar come down from the mountains and destroy crops and be beaten to death? Lu Yuwang let the wild boar go. He came out, showed a gentle and praising smile, and patted Lu Chang'an's arm. Chang'an is very capable. Hunting a wild boar is nothing. Maybe one day he will bring back a tiger for you. Mom. Why are you joining in the fun? And Nuan was disciplining her boyfriend when a man who was making trouble came and became even more angry and even beat a tiger. Do you think you have found Wu Song as your son-in-law? Didn't her saying this make Lu Chang'an less concerned about dangerous things? It's okay. To be honest, it's because there are no tigers to hunt now. Otherwise, hunting tigers is no different from hunting wild boars, Lu Chang'an said to Lu Yuwang. In these matters, older girls are more knowledgeable. Some. Lu Yuwang smiled and lightly hit Lu Chang'an's arm. There is still a difference between hunting a tiger and hunting a wild boar. Now they are just talking casually and teasing An Nuan together. If Lu Chang'an really wants to fight a tiger, Lu Yuwang couldn't let him go either. Lu Chang'an smiled and looked at the 2 women, looking like they could really control him. Lu Chang'an coughed in a dignified manner. If the tiger is not beaten, the wild boar still needs to be eaten. I will come later, cook. And Nuan was helpless. Generally speaking, wild boars were the limit of wild animals that could be encountered. What more dangerous behavior could he do? Thinking of this, An Nuan felt a little relieved, and she was also curious about where her boyfriend's limit was. What would be the biggest surprise he could give her? Maybe what he said about his immortality was true. And Nuan couldn't help but laugh again. This guy obviously did some messy things all day long, but he always gave people a very reliable feeling. It was really strange. Did you give some to Teacher Qin? Lu Yuwang asked smoothly. Forgot. Based on the same reason, Qin Yanan did not need wild boar meat for nourishment. Of course, Lu Chang'an did not specially give Qin Yanan this food. But I feel that I have been negligent. After all, Qin Yanan is different from An Nuan and Lu Yuwang. The mother and daughter basically have no possibility of cooking for him and serving him, but Qin Yanan often prepares exquisite ingredients to treat him to dinner. Then you have to give some to Teacher Qin. Lu Yuwang was a little satisfied, because he finally had the opportunity to point out his almost omnipotent daughter's boyfriend as an elder, and it felt pretty good. Okay, I'll give her a ride when I get home, Lu Chang'an agreed. Fortunately, you reminded me. Then please help me and ask if you can get me a rice cooker like yours at a low price, Lu Yuwang said with a smile. Okay. After saying that, Lu Chang'an went to the kitchen to marinate the pork. And Nuan had been winking at Lu Yuwang for a long time, stamping her feet anxiously. You, why did you come up with such a bad idea? Why did I come up with such a bad idea? After all, Chang'an is not very old, and he is not good at dealing with people. He shot a wild boar and gave it to us. How could he not give some to teacher Qin? It's not good to offend others, Lu Yuwang. Of course it has its own reasons, especially in an institution like a school, where there are a lot of human relationships. You are sending a sheep into the tiger's mouth. Lu Chang'an might be eaten clean by her, and Nuan was furious. What are you talking nonsense about? You're just here for your rice cooker, right? Is that what I mean? I'll just ask Chang'an to mention it to me. Lu Yuwang coughed slightly guiltily. No, I want to go with him. And Nuan stopped knitting sweaters in the afternoon and didn't go to the volleyball training camp. Why are you so annoying? Lu Yuwang didn't bother to care about her. Anyway, he really annoyed Lu Chang'an. It looked like her moral character had been dealt with honestly. So Nuan hurried to the kitchen to make trouble. Do you miss me again? Lu Chang'an asked without looking back. This was Nuan's usual excuse. Yeah, Nuan snorted, and I want to go with you to deliver wild boar meat to teacher Qin. Good. Nuan was stunned for a moment. Why did you agree so quickly? If I hesitated, then you must say that I must have reluctantly agreed. I must have had something in my heart. I must have disliked you for disturbing my relationship with Qin Yinan. It must have been, what else? You must be trying to steal someone behind my back. And Nuan followed him smoothly, and then saw Lu Chang'an's smiling face of sure enough, and couldn't help but blush. I didn't think so. Anyway, you agreed too quickly. It means that you are deliberately on guard. Under normal circumstances, you should naturally and slightly doubtfully ask, what are you going to do? You keep doing it, and I'll beat you up when you do it until I can't stand it anymore. Lu Chang'an didn't mind that she was already doing it. Women, generally speaking, of course it's not okay to use spanking to educate her, but if she did it, don't be too violent, spank her butt, and give her a slap that won't cause a concussion. In fact, there is no problem. She will, after you calm down. If she still cries all over the place, walk away and let her calm down. The kind of public account that educates men and women on how to deal with relationships always likes to preach about not being coldly violent to women. Sometimes she has to cool down before she can reflect on herself. Many women just refuse to eat and drink as a penalty. Of course, if you are not suitable for teaching students in accordance with their aptitude, then you should not do it to avoid regrets later. How are you going to hit me? And Nuan was not afraid, and she would not make Lu Chang'an unconscious with anger. Hit you with a wet willow branch soaked in water. Lu Chang'an also has rich experience in beating people. Generally speaking, hitting people with water-soaked willow sticks and salt-soaked bamboo sticks is more painful. You actually want to hit someone. So Nuan hurriedly ran out of the kitchen. She ran to Lu Yuwang and realized, how could she complain to her mother about the fight between herself and Lu Chang'an? So he ran into the kitchen again, beating and biting people. It was so annoying that Lu Chang'an simply washed his hands, turned around and put his arms around her to stop her from making trouble. Lu Yuwang originally heard Nuan's noises in the kitchen, but suddenly it became quiet. Lu Yuwang quickly returned to the living room, turned on the TV, and turned the volume up. Then the sound of various cooking utensils, bowls, and chopsticks clashing together resumed in the kitchen, and Nuan deliberately said something loud and clear, as if she was just chatting with Lu Chang'an about the weather forecast and traffic conditions. You bully me. After Nuan talked about the weather forecast and traffic conditions for a while, her voice became softer. Her eyes were filled with water. She said she was being bullied, but the blush on her cheeks and the charm of the girl between her eyebrows made it clear that she was being bullied. Bullied. Before, you always claimed that you were the only one who bullied me. Now things have changed. You have to know that before we fall in love, girls usually bully boys. After we fall in love, it's the other way around. It's me who bullies you. Lu Chang'an looked back at the girl who was so beautiful because of her shyness and charm. Just accept your fate. I know. And Nuan hugged Lu Chang'an from behind, rubbing her cheek against his back and nodding. After the wild boar was blanched and marinated, Lu Chang'an added peppercorns, cloves, bay leaves, cinnamon and dried chili peppers to the pot, poured water and boiled it with the ginger slices. When it boiled, poured it into a casserole, then put the wild boar in and turned it on over high heat. After boiling and simmering over low heat, I fried 2 side dishes for lunch, giving the mother and daughter a full meal. Although An Nuan said that he had to accept his fate after being bullied by Lu Chang'an, he did not stay at home very well and still wanted to go with Lu Chang'an to deliver pork to Qin Yinan. Lu Chang'an went back in the afternoon to get some wild boar meat, and then came back to meet An Nuan at the foot of Lushan Mountain. An Nuan saw Lu Chang'an carrying wild boar meat. He was still looking the same as when he came to Orange Garden Community at noon today. He pursed his lips and drew circles on the ground with his toes. He felt that because of the intimacy in the kitchen at noon today, there was a gap between the two of them. It seemed that they were getting closer again, and the most important thing was that An Nuan shyly found that she liked this. You must not let him find out that you like her, and you must be reserved, elegant and pure. I called. She is at home. Just ask us to go up directly. Lu Chang'an saw An Nuan and waved. An Nuan came over and took Lu Chang'an's arm. Let's take the cable car up. I haven't sat on the cable car with you yet. Does it matter if we've ridden a cable car together? But girls just feel that many things must be done together, so Lu Chang'an and An Nuan bought cable car tickets and queued for a while to take the cable car up the mountain. Fortunately, it's not the peak tourist season. Nowadays, people who come to Iwan Pavilion to enjoy the maple leaves don't take this route, and the queues don't stretch for hundreds of meters. Arriving at the hotel suite on the top of the mountain, even An Nuan, who didn't pay much attention to other people's material conditions and life enjoyment, felt that Qin Yinan was an exquisite elegant person. It was a pity that she was his love rival, otherwise he could have praised her more. An Nuan is here too. Qin Yinan knew on the phone that An Nuan and Lu Chang'an were here together. Of course she knew what this jealous little girl was thinking. If you are jealous, just be jealous. As the target of being jealous, it means that An Nuan recognizes Qin Yinan's charm and believes that Qin Yinan has the charm to Lu Chang'an that threatens An Nuan's status. This is something to be happy about. The smile on Qin Yinan's face today was very sincere. When she saw An Nuan, she showed a warm welcome and her tone was very gentle. An Nuan didn't find it strange. Although she and Qin Yinan didn't deal with each other, we were not shrews in the market. How could we use nails, scissors, and hair when we met? Of course, they were greeting each other as usual, but An Nuan was just sure that it wouldn't be long before the two sides started to engage in verbal quarrels and guns and sticks. I'm accompanying him. I hope Teacher Qin doesn't mind my coming uninvited. An Nuan's smile was also sincere, and she didn't think much about the other meanings in Qin Yinan's first greeting. No, no, of course not. Qin Yinan smiled and walked to the cabinet, put away the keys on the cabinet, and then went to the water bar to get drinks to entertain her. An Nuan saw Qin Yinan's action of collecting the key. Of course An Nuan recognized that it was the key to Lu Chang'an's house. Did Qin Yinan not intend to irritate An Nuan? An Nuan was afraid that Lu Chang'an would really hit someone, so she took out the real estate certificate from her bag and hid it at home. That's fine, she won't use the key to irritate An Nuan, and An Nuan doesn't have to worry about not bringing her real estate certificate. Wild boar meat. Lu Chang'an handed it to Qin Yinan. Qin Yinan opened it, looked at it, and said with a smile, I'll marinate it in a while and eat it tomorrow. You must have tasted it today. I won't eat wild boar meat tonight. I'll cook some other dishes. Ah, that's so embarrassing. No, let's go back for dinner tonight. An Nuan was a little surprised that Qin Yinan would still leave food. Wouldn't Qin Yinan dislike An Nuan being an eyesore here? Logically speaking, if two people are under the same roof, they should dislike each other. Their eyebrows are not eyebrows, and their noses are not noses. Let's have a meal together. Lu Chang'an insisted that eating together is an important event that promotes harmony. Now that we can all sit down and have a meal together, wouldn't the relationship become more harmonious? Okay, I'll excuse you. And Nuan felt that she couldn't show weakness, otherwise she would lose. She, Qin Yinan, could act openly and nonchalantly, but if she couldn't respond in the same way, she would look too petty. It's okay. You are Chang'an's girlfriend, so you are my younger brother and sister. Why bother? Qin Yinan raised the corners of her mouth slightly, showing a warm and intimate smile that was not artificial or artificial. She bent down and poured orange juice for Lu Chang'an and An Nuan. Seeing Qin Yinan's bending action, An Nuan couldn't help but become vigilant, but Qin Yinan didn't mean to provoke or seduce intentionally. She held down her collar. Lu Chang'an felt that something was wrong with Qin Yinan. Could it be that Sunangxiu's appearance made her contrast and shift her hostility? After all, the hostility between Qin Yinan and Sunangxiu goes back to ancient times. Chang'an, you show Anyuan around and play upstairs. I'll go to the kitchen to cook first. I'll call you when the food is ready. Qin Yinan said something to Lu Chang'an, then changed into a pair of non-slip slippers and went to the kitchen. Lu Chang'an took 2 glasses of orange juice, held An Nuan's hand, and went to the viewing balcony on the roof to visit. An Nuan frowned, and the soldiers came to cover up the water and earth, but they wanted to see what medicine she was selling in Qin Yinan's gourd. The 6th update of the Silver League broke out. Please vote for me. I recommend a book. Private customization of the movie world. Every movie is a journey, the sexy style of Marilyn Monroe, the infinite loneliness of overseas islands, the passionate kiss of Audrey Hepburn, and the painful journey of trying to live. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 489. Lu Chang'an and An Nuan boarded the viewing platform. Lu Chang'an put down the 2 glasses of orange juice in his hand, took An Nuan's hand and approached the edge of the balcony, looking at the bleak autumn scenery. Standing at the highest point of Lushan Mountain, he could see far away. I didn't pay attention to the outline of Elephant Trunk Mountain at the top of the mountain last night. I must take the time to go there tonight and have another look. I'm here to see you off. It's the late autumn of my country, and the weather is beginning to be calm. The clear river for thousands of miles is like a train, and the green peaks are like clusters. The sails are gone in the setting sun, with the west wind at my back, and the wine flag is leaning. The colorful boat has light clouds, and the stars and rivers have herons rising, making it difficult to draw a picture. Lu Chang'an casually looked at the scenery and read half of the song Fragrance of Gazi. In this day and age, if most people get excited while looking at the scenery and suddenly recite poems, it will always feel a bit awkward and artificial. However, An Nuan didn't think Lu Chang'an would make people feel that way. The poems that came out of his mouth were plain and ordinary. It was as if he was talking casually. There is no deliberate cadence, but it can give people a more appropriate description of the scenery and poetic feeling. However, An Nuan remembered the sentence in the second half of the poem. To this day, business women still sing this song all the time, leaving behind songs in the backyard. In order to prove that she was a pure girl, An Nuan changed her mind in time and said quickly, the great thing about Wang Engxi's poem is that he looks at the old events of the 6 dynasties from the perspective of the galaxy, which is quite interesting. The people are suffering and dying. The people are suffering. It feels like a business girl who doesn't know how to hate the country's subjugation and an ugly scholar who still sings about the flowers in the backyard across the river. Her appearance and level of thought are so high that I don't know where she is. Du Shizhen comes from a wealthy family that has been glorious for hundreds of years. It is inevitable that his ideological level is restricted by his class. He is far inferior to us who have received Marxist education and adhere to the core socialist values. It is still a bit inappropriate to say that he is an ugly scholar. Besides, he has so many fans, and just opening his mouth to complain can easily cause trouble. Lu Chang'an smiled and shook his head. This Du Mu would be the protagonist's template in girls' novels. At home, it is, the old house opens a wealthy family, in the middle of Chang'an City, and there is no one in the middle. Thousands of books filled the hall, 200 collections of family collections, and the kings and queens, when he was in his early 20s, Daifang Palace Ode was used as a signboard, and he was really not ugly, it was just that An Nuan was inevitably from a woman's point of view, and the country the death was not caused by you nobles and wealthy families. How can a poor girl make a living by using you? But why are we talking about poetry? We should be talking about love and showing affection. Just let Qin Yinan's camera record it. Maybe she will look back. And Nuan glanced at the camera installed in the corner and said. She not only has cameras here, but also sound collection. See that black radar-like thing? That's the noise filtering sound collection equipment. Lu Chang'an pointed with a smile. And Nuan was immediately embarrassed. It would be really embarrassing if Qin Yinan heard what she just said. She quickly stamped her feet and complained, "It was all you, didn't you remind me earlier? Who told you to always prepare bad thoughts? I call it guarding love. Do I need you to guard me? If I really want to cheat on you, you won't be able to guard me for 100 times. 100 of me will form several Bagua arrays to take turns guarding. Do you think I can hold it? The Bagua array is useless. You really plan to cheat?" Speaking of cheating, Du Mu is quite miserable. His girlfriends are all girls from brothels, and they all cuckolded him, not to mention that girls from brothels are not cheating. Later, he fell in love with a little girl in her teens, and, I paid a betrothal gift and promised to marry him when he became the governor 10 years later. This man really worked hard and was finally transferred to be the governor. As a result, the little girl has a child. Lu Chang'an laughed. How many years have passed? The suffering of others will no longer be felt by others. Oh my God, he has taken a liking to such a small girl, isn't this perverted? And Nuan clicked her tongue with emotion. This is called nurturing, but he didn't take her with him and let others raise her at home. He paid for her to be his wife. Lu Chang'an corrected An Nuan's concept. You also want to raise a little daughter-in-law, right? An Nuan asked, reaching out and scratching Lu Chang'an's chest. He chuckled and stepped back quickly, as if he was afraid that he would retaliate in the same way. After all, today's intimate contact was a substantial progress, and An Nuan no longer pretended to be shy all the time, she just wanted to tease her boyfriend. An Nuan backed away with a smile, stretched out her hand again, scratched Lu Chang'an's chest, then screamed and ran back. Plop! An Nuan fell into the swimming pool. Lu Chang'an stood on the shore looking at her and laughing. You. An Nuan patted the water and stood up, feeling embarrassed. Seeing Lu Chang'an still laughing, she felt funny and angry. Look, I fell into the water and you didn't come to save me. The water is only 1 meter deep and is not as long as your legs. I don't want to get all my clothes wet. Lu Chang'an squatted down and looked at An Nuan, who was wet and out of the water. An Nuan had already stood firm. After looking at it, he saw that the fruit was not deep. He stretched out his hand to splash water, frowned and pouted. What should I do now? I can't go home so wet, can I? Come up first. Lu Chang'an handed her over and pulled her up. I hate it. I hate it. It's all you. And Nuan took Lu Chang'an's hand, stomped her feet and complained. She couldn't blame herself, then blame him, that's what boyfriends do. Lu Chang'an took An Nuan downstairs. Qin Yinan came out of the kitchen and couldn't help laughing in surprise. What's going on? I didn't pay attention, bumped into her and fell into the swimming pool, Lu Chang'an said. An Nuan nodded quickly and said, that was it? You are too careless, Qin Yinan said angrily to Lu Chang'an. Even if Lu Chang'an was in a normal state, he still had great strength. He turned to An Nuan and said, follow me. An Nuan glanced at Lu Chang'an, feeling slightly sweet in her heart. She pulled up her skirt to reward his eyes, and then followed Chinyanan into the cloakroom. After all, if she felt a little stupid for falling into the water, she didn't want to act stupid in front of Chinyanan. There were 2 cloakrooms in total. Of course, Chinyanan did not take Nuan to her own cloakroom. She searched in the cloakroom and brought out a pair of pajamas and a set of underwear. Zhu Huntang usually sleeps here with me. Her underwear, you should be able to wear it. I have some that she didn't wear here, so you can make do with it. The pajamas are mine and they are new. We are about the same height, so you should be able to wear them too. It's too much trouble for you, Nuan said embarrassedly. Put the clothes you have changed into in the dirty clothes basket. The ones on the left are for coats and trousers, and the right are for trousers and underwear. I'm afraid they won't dry for a while. I have something wrong with the clothes dryer here today. I need to use it. No, after Chinyanan finished speaking, she thought again, you should change your clothes first, wipe your hair, and eat first. Thank you, I'm sorry to trouble you so much. Nuan looked at Chinyanan's generous enthusiasm and appropriately gentle attitude in her own home, and almost thought that she had always been so comfortable getting along with each other. No trouble, please change quickly. I'll fry some more vegetables and eat them. After Chinyanan finished speaking, he walked out and closed the door. Nuan frowned slightly while holding her pajamas. Chinyanan was too talkative today, as if the 2 of them had never been dirty at all. She was the woman who held the key and dangled it in front of Nuan. This level of cruelty clearly pierced Nuan's heart. With such a person's gentle attitude now, should he let down his guard? Let's change clothes first. These pajamas are in Chinyanan's size. Nuan wears them a little loosely. But the size of this underwear is just enough for underwear. The bra is still Zhu Huntang's own size. Nuan, I can't wear it anymore, after all, I have grown up a bit now. Nuan had no choice but to stop wearing a bra. It didn't matter. There were no other men here. There was a layer of pleated patterns on the chest of her pajamas, which was just enough to block some traces. Nuan's skirt cannot be machine washed, so I gently squeezed out the water and hung it up together with the safety pants and underwear. I couldn't wash it for a while, which was really frustrating. After dinner, Nuan was about to ask Lu Chang'an to help her go home to get some clothes, but Chinyanan took out the cards and said they would play landlords for a while. Chinyanan has always been so hospitable, and Nuan is too embarrassed to send Lu Chang'an out when they are about to play cards. How bad is that? What's more, Lu Chang'an went out, and it was still very embarrassing for him and Chinyanan to stare at each other here, so Nuan decided to play cards for a while first. Nuan was very lucky tonight. As long as he could become a landlord, he would basically win with a 3-point card. In a short time, he had completely won Lu Chang'an's 200 yuan in cash, so he had to take it out. Pay via mobile phone. Chinyanan lost and won, but what she won was also Lu Chang'an's. All she got was the money in her mobile phone. She also lost all her own cash to Nuan. Nuan didn't expect that her luck at cards would be so good today. She proudly said that she rarely played cards, and at the same time said that she would make Lu Chang'an lose his pants. While playing, Chinyanan started to yawn, and Nuan still had some unfinished thoughts. Lu Chang'an said not to fight first. He didn't deliberately lose, but for some reason, Nuan was so lucky today that he couldn't stop him. Actually, the key is that Chinyanan's performance was too bad. That's it for today, hee. I'll send you 2 red envelopes to appease you because we have to collect money and give out money, and we have known each other for a long time. It would feel like sitting together but deliberately not adding a friend to Chinyanan. It was a bit embarrassing, so Nuan and Chinyanan made a tacit understanding and went through the process of adding friends. Nuan did not set the moment's permission for Chinyanan, but only changed the visibility of the moment's information from 3 days to half a year. Chinyanan also did not set Anyuan to be unable to view moments. She would post it later, such as when Lu Chang'an came to eat. And Nuan sent red envelopes to Qinyanan and Lu Chang'an. This is a qualification that only the final winner has, which can increase the sense of accomplishment of his victory. Play mahjong another day or run the beard. Lu Chang'an glanced at Qinyanan. He and Qinyanan were farmers, and they basically lost when they played landlord's cards together. Such teammates were undesirable. It felt like Qinyanan was letting things slip on purpose. Why was she trying to make Nuan happy? Lu Chang'an had some suspicions that Qinyanan wanted to cause trouble, but there was no evidence. Humph, I'm also very good at playing mahjong and running beards, and Nuan was proud of himself. It's too late, Chang'an, will you go back and get some clothes for you? Qinyanan walked to the window and looked at it, then turned back and said to Nuan. Nuan was stunned for a moment and looked at the time. It was already past 10 o'clock. Moreover, what Qinyanan said was very telling. She first called her name very late. If Nuan still asked Lu Chang'an to help her get clothes, wouldn't it mean that Nuan was too self-willed and did not consider others at all? It's okay. There are men, women, and children in pajamas wandering around Junsha day and night, Lu Chang'an said nonchalantly, and then said to Qinyanan, you should also go to bed early. I will take her back. Walking in pajamas, Nuan had never done this before, let alone walking so far. There were no taxis on the mountain, and the cable car had stopped at such a late hour. How about I send you off? After Qinyanan finished speaking, he yawned and was about to get the car keys. He yawned 3 times in a row, looking like he was about to shed tears, and explained to Lu Chang'an, I've been here for a few days. I always have the same dream as before, and I haven't slept well. Of course, she wanted to make Lu Chang'an understand that she was not acting like this on purpose. With her physical condition, she rarely felt so sleepy. It was just because of her previous sleepwalking, dreaming about Yesijin and the like, so that he could understand. No. Don't bother you. Nuan said quickly. She had to follow Lu Chang'an, and she was not invited by others. But she was so sleepy now, and she still asked someone to take her home. How could it be so excessive? How about you guys stay here tonight? Chang'an can sleep in the guest room. Nuan, you can sleep with me. We can also have a good chat about Lu Chang'an. Qinyanan wiped his eyes and smiled to persuade him to stay. Guest. It was brought up casually, lazily, and you could agree or not. You are already familiar with it, and there is no need to force him to stay. You shouldn't have to leave, right? Okay, Lu Chang'an thought for a while. He originally planned to go to Elephant Trunk Wo Mountain to take a look tonight. It's closer from here, but he originally wanted to go with Qinyanan to take a look. If there were other mutated wild boars and the like can also be used by Qinyanan to practice. Let's forget it now, lest Nuan wakes up and discovers that Qinyanan is missing. She will definitely run to Lu Chang'an's room to have a look, and then it will become a matter of grabbing in. It would be strange to charge them with Tong Liang. Lu Chang'an nodded, and Nuan didn't have the habit of making things difficult for others, so she could only smile apologetically. I didn't expect to completely disturb him. It doesn't matter. I just installed a hot spring system. It's very comfortable to soak in. Let's take a bath together. Qinyanan enthusiastically invited Nuan. How about we go together? Lu Chang'an suggested. Qinyanan and Nuan's expressions changed. They looked at Lu Chang'an in disbelief. They couldn't believe that he would tease others in front of his girlfriend. Isn't it a hot spring? There must be a hot spring swimsuit. What does it have to do with it? Lu Chang'an laughed. Where did you want to go? Who is going to prepare a hot spring bathing suit while soaking in a hot spring at home? Go away. Go and stay in your small room. Qinyanan pushed Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an twisted his neck, not caring about the unfair treatment. Have you ever soaked next to an underwater volcano? That's much more exciting. What do you think this is? Lu Chang'an walked into the guest room, and An Nuan smiled sheepishly. He just talks a lot, but he's actually quite a serious person. Just pretend that what happened in the kitchen at noon today didn't happen. An Nuan was calm and composed. When a girl is protecting her boyfriend's image, she should act confidently even if she lies to her face. Yes, I feel like he is the kind of person who can tell others about the major events since the anti-Japanese war when he sees a beautiful woman without clothes. Qin Yinan agreed with a smile. After all, he is his brother, how can he say anything wrong with him? The so-called family scandal should not be publicized. He hasn't told me any major events, but he does make dirty jokes from time to time, and he has to be scolded, but his biggest advantage is that he will never tell dirty jokes to other girls. It makes other girls tremble. And Nuan looked like she was still unfinished when talking about her boyfriend, and the smile on her lips was sweet. He is a well-read and knowledgeable person. What is really great is his interpretation of allusions contained in many poems and songs, historical figures, and background analysis. Especially when I cook, he can do many state banquet dishes. Telling the details of 1, 2, 3, 4, I often listen to it and am amazed the little girl is really not shy. Qin Yinan could have added the words beautiful woman without clothes. Qin Yinan spoke and saw An Nuan showed some emotion, and quickly turned around gracefully, brushing the hair on one side of her face with her fingers, smiling lightly. You have such an excellent boyfriend, it's really worth paying attention to. The smile on An Nuan's face was shallow and shy. After all, people were praising his boyfriend, but, it's really worth paying attention to. Do you want me to serve snacks, or do you plan to serve snacks? By the way, this is the normal Qin Yinan. An Nuan knows it. The rain is about to come and the wind is all over the building. There has been a gentle breeze blowing in the face this afternoon and evening, but this gentle breeze is also blowing all over the building. Now it means the rain is coming. I'll take it seriously. I actually keep an eye on him. Although I haven't gone through his chat history to see if he has liked or interacted with other girls, as long as we call and message each other diligently, just click on it. After all, it's not uncommon for a boy like him to always have a few vixens around him. And Nuan restrained her shy smile. I am his girlfriend after all, and it's legitimate. As long as it's not it's too much, and he doesn't mind me staring. The little vixen is easy to handle, but his skills are shallow. I am afraid of those old fairies who have lived for who knows how many years. Who knows what methods they will use. You will be hard to guard against. Qin Yinan didn't mind giving An Nuan a shot of vaccination. This little girl's family is too innocent. What the hell is a little vixen? The old fox Sunangzia really didn't know what tricks he was hiding. Qin Yinan didn't believe that Sunangzia would always be safe and sound. Anyway, she was just a younger sister. One day, Sunangzia and An Nuan got into a fight, and she just sat on the mountain and watched the vixen fight. How many years has the old goblin lived? Could it be that Qin Yinan also felt that there was some ambiguity between Professor Lu and Lu Chang'an? Or did she know about the past between Professor Lu and Lu Chang'an? But, why does she say that her mother is an old goblin? An Nuan can be jealous herself, but she will never let others scold her mother. It's good to be young when you're young, and it's good to be old when you're old. I'm afraid that Zhong Bulet and Lu Qiu will have to join in the fun if you can't rely on both sides. And Nuan smiled, folded her hands on her chest. By the way, Teacher Qin, the chase in the school you seem to have quite a few male teachers, some young and some old. I really envy Teacher Qin, he is so charming. And Nuan didn't want to be too arrogant, so she tried to buffer herself. I like the older one. Qin Yinan smiled shyly, but this kind of liking is quite complicated. It's more like Confucian admiration, a feeling of family affection. And Nuan was a little surprised. Could it be that Qin Yinan had an electroplot? But why do you say it's Rumua? It still feels like a family. Are you looking for a boyfriend or a godfather? You go in first, and I'll help you bring your clothes in. Chinyanan pointed to the hot spring room and said to Nuan. It was connected to the original bathroom. The newly refurbished hot spring room is larger, so you can soak in the hot springs in autumn and winter. It's more nourishing than just taking a bath. Nuan went in first, took off her clothes and flushed her body, and then walked into the hot spring pool. Chinyanan had already opened the hot spring. The water vapor was filled inside, and it felt no different from those natural hot springs. Chinyanan walked in after a while, and it wasn't until Chinyanan stepped into the pool that Nuan could clearly see Chinyanan's face and figure. At this moment, Nuan suddenly understood why Chinyanan had to let her stay overnight today, and she had fallen into the trap. The so-called war is actually an attack on various resources, such as logistics, troops, and generals. Only by making full use of the advantages of each party and targeting the opponent's disadvantages can victory be achieved. Just like Chinyanan once used the advantageous resource of keys to attack Nuan and won a great victory, but Nuan later used the real estate certificate to counter-attack and severely damage the opponent. Today Chinyanan took out her ultimate weapon, which is where she has the greatest advantage over Nuan, and she took advantage of Nuan's failure to shorten the gap, being despicable and shameless. At this time, it would be useless even if Nuan yelled, 30 years to the east of Hedong, 30 years to the west of Hexi, don't bully the girl. After all, the enemy won't give her so much time before she reveals her weapon. By the way, I recommend a friend's book Weapon Master. If you are interested, you can read it. The 7 outbreaks of the Silver Alliance are completed. Thank you for your support. Please vote for me. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 490. Chinyanan's neck was slightly raised, like a proud swan. She held the back of her neck with one hand, stepped on the edge of the hot spring pool with her heels, and slid into the water like a fish. Chinyanan didn't deliberately show anything at this time, and even let her head appear above the water at the first time, because she had just seen the shock and frustration in the girl's eyes, and that was enough. Just like when I shook my head and said I have the key to his house in front of her. Chinyanan suppressed the pride in her heart and tried to calm down her mood. After all, this was a matter of course. Even Sumei was a loser back then. Yasijin was a king in the past, and so is Chinyanan now. Nuan was indeed a little too shocked, but now she was shocked by another issue. Teacher Chin, you have shrunk, Nuan stared at Chinyanan dumbfounded. What? Chinyanan was closing her eyes slightly, enjoying the wonderful feeling of the hot spring water washing her skin, and the envious and jealous eyes next to her. You. It's like you are really transforming. Nuan could see clearly. It was definitely not a visual error caused by the refraction of light in the water. She couldn't help but move over a little to confirm. Chinyanan's whole body is really much smaller than before, and he is shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. What are you talking about? Mine is not a balloon. It can still leak. Chinyanan finally heard clearly. She was funny and angry. Is this little girl going crazy because of the shock? See for yourself, you just lost weight suddenly like a leak. Nuan couldn't care less about gloating. After all, this rare situation can easily make people break away from the narrow jealousy and become indifferent. So low-level taste. Chinyanan then opened her eyes and took a closer look. She seemed to have suddenly lost a lot of weight. What's going on? Chinyanan and Nuan were as dumbfounded as they stared at her in disbelief. You said you are not a balloon anymore, you are deflated, and Nuan only felt that Chinyanan's plumpness had shrunk. The originally plump and mature woman's appearance had actually become thinner. Appearance? No. I didn't. I'm not a balloon. Chinyanan hurriedly stood up from the hot spring water and stood in front of the mirror and looked at herself. My height has not changed, and my figure is still perfect, but it is not as distinctive as before. My whole body seems to have undergone fat reduction training, and I have lost a lot of weight. Yeah, yes Ijin. Chinyanan looked at herself in the mirror, and suddenly felt that the corners of her mouth that should have been dumbfounded turned up with a soft curve, which was particularly weird in the mirror. Chinyanan stumbled and fainted on the ground. Teacher Chin. And Nuan hurriedly climbed out of the hot spring, squatted in front of Chinyanan and tested her heartbeat and breathing. She quickly opened the exhaust fan and windows, then wrapped herself in a towel and ran out to find Lu Chang'an. Under this situation, Nuan didn't dare to move Chinyanan casually, let alone put a towel on her body to block her. Who knew whether it would affect her heat dissipation, breathing, etc. Nuan knocked on the door of the guest room eagerly and saw that Lu Chang'an was still wearing his original clothes and had not changed into pajamas. She didn't care to ask him what he was doing since he was not ready to sleep for so long, and quickly said, "Teacher Chin." Chin the teacher deflated like a balloon, and fainted. Leak. What is this nonsense? But now is not the time to analyze why Nuan said the word air leak. Lu Chang'an casually took a bath towel and walked to the hot spring room. He raised his hand and threw it in. It fell on Chinyanan's body. Lu Chang'an bent down. He hugged Chinyanan with a bath towel, picked her up and walked into the bedroom. Lu Chang'an stretched out his hand to test Chinyanan's breathing, put his fingers on her neck, and then pointed to a cabinet, "Bring the first aid kit over here." Nuan hurriedly ran over to open the cabinet and took out the first aid kit. Lu Chang'an found a band-aid and took it in his hand. His fingernails made a thin cut on Chinyanan's arm. He looked at the symptoms of flesh and blood, and then immediately put a band-aid on the wound. "There's nothing wrong with her." Lu Chang'an turned around and said to Nuan. "Ah," Nuan came to her senses and said still worriedly, "Is there really nothing wrong? Do you want to send her to the hospital for a checkup?" "It's okay." Lu Chang'an shook Nuan's hand. She was really a kind little girl. Just because she likes to be jealous, is Nuan an ordinary family version of Sume? This logic is incomprehensible. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 491. Nuan was usually very jealous, and Lu Chang'an would even look at Lu Yuwang's back sometimes and try to turn his face away. Sometimes Lu Chang'an's eyes could see her and Lu Yuwang at the same time, and she had to turn his face away. But today Chinyanan was wearing nothing, but she didn't care about anything and called Lu Chang'an over. This is what Lu Chang'an has always found so cute about her. She has a kind heart and is as warm as a spring breeze. She has never indulged her selfishness without any bottom line. Today's situation, if another person were to accompany Chinyanan, the way of handling and coping might be completely different. From a certain assumption, if Nuan was the one who got into trouble today, Lu Chang'an also believed that Chinyanan would not hide any small thoughts to delay the matter. The time to distinguish between good and evil is when facing the big issues of right and wrong. This is why Lu Chang'an is jealous of Nuan and Chinyanan, but is not particularly bothered, because it is impossible for them to do something to each other that Lu Chang'an cannot tolerate. How could she be like this? Nuan was puzzled. Her boyfriend's diagnosis was that Chinyanan was fine. Nuan felt that Lu Chang'an must have his reasons, but this matter was still beyond common sense, and Nuan couldn't help but be surprised and confused. How should I put it? This condition is not a disease, but it involves people's physical privacy. I can't explain anything more to you, because Chinyanan may not be willing to let you know. Lu Chang'an held Nuan's palm, one by one. He pinched it with his fingers, looked up at her and smiled. "Don't worry, let's go soak for a while." "How can I be in the mood to go to the hot spring? It's really scary. If we are not here tonight and something happens to Teacher Chin alone, what will happen?" Nuan asked worriedly. then she won't be able to do it in the future. It happens like this. If you faint at a young age for no reason, there might be some hidden danger. That's what my mother said. Your mother is right about this, but her problem is quite special. It's not life-threatening, so you don't have to worry about it. Lu Chang'an let go of her finger. Be good, stop asking questions, you're curious. Just like a baby. And Nuan took 2 steps back, still curious. Lu Chang'an looked at her with a smile and opened his arms. He saw how cute she was and wanted to hug her. No, and Nuan pointed at Qin Yinan, funny and angry, can you separate the occasion? Teacher Qin is still fainting. Oh, actually it's nothing. It turns out that Lu Chang'an stopped in time, I didn't want to do anything excessive. Otherwise, you still think too much, and Nuan said proudly. Lu Chang'an turned around, lifted the band-aid on Qin Yinan's arm and looked at it. The scar had disappeared, so Lu Chang'an pressed the band-aid carefully and put it on again. If your skin is good, it's good, and the band-aid will stay strong even if you put it on again. Hey, how long will you continue to faint? Lu Chang'an asked. Qin Yinan didn't answer him. She was in a daze. You must have been awake when I put you on the bed to check. Lu Chang'an took the time to help her pull out the bath towel. Fortunately, the bath towel was big enough to be used as a blanket. When Lu Chang'an carried her and put her on the bed, her legs were spread a little apart, but now they were tightly together, obviously not wanting to be exposed when only a bath towel covered her body. Qin Yinan remained silent, which was really embarrassing, especially when this happened to her in front of An Nuan. You just had a leak. Such words made Qin Yinan feel humiliated. It was originally intended to reduce dimensionality and attack An Yuan. This was as tragic as the newly built dam in the South Asian Empire that claimed to surpass the Three Gorges, but was immediately washed away by the flood. The most important thing is that her figure shrunk and Lu Chang'an saw it. If you can't understand it, think about it from his perspective, that's probably how it feels. Recovered Lu Chang'an somewhat understood the reason why Qin Yinan refused to open his eyes. He patted Qin Yinan's shoulder, and it felt like normal skin again. When I just rushed into the bathroom, I almost thought it was the former Jin. Son, it's just that your figure has completely recovered now. I suspect that the change in your appearance after rebirth is related to Shangguan Dandan. You might as well find a time to ask her why your figure is heavier now than Yesijin's before. Lu Chang'an didn't know to what extent Shangguan Dandan could use that coffin to transform her life, but considering Shangguan Dandan's unusual thinking, she transformed the body of the former Yesijin, so that now Qin Yinan's figure is different from that of ordinary people. Yesijin is also possible. Apart from this, there is no way to explain Qin Yinan's physical changes, which are different from the mutations of Zhu Huntang and Wild Boar. Shangguan Dandan firmly believed that Lu Chang'an was particularly fond of the wet nurse, so it was not surprising that he made Qin Yinan plumper than Yesijin. Probably because of this, Qin Yinan's physical condition is not stable enough and will shrink into Yesijin's original appearance at some point. This is not because Yesijin wants to occupy Qin Yinan's body again. Without the existence of ghosts, how can they replace them? At most, the memory is not accepted, and the past memory interferes with the current thinking and emotions. Qin Yinan's eyelashes trembled slightly. She opened them slightly and looked at herself. Seems like business as usual. She closed her eyes again, and the blush spread from the base of her ears, as if the spring breeze caressed by the pen and ink, and the flowers bloomed for a moment. Are you autistic? That's good. Then you and Shangguan Dandan can form an autistic duo. Your relationship is not bad. Lu Chang'an sighed softly. Shangguan Dandan got a handful yesterday afternoon. The kitchen knife entered the room, and she never came out until I went out this morning. Do you know why she didn't come out? Because she was worried that there would be housework for her to do. Firstly, she couldn't do it, and secondly, she didn't want to. So I just shut myself up and probably still lie in a coffin. Qin Yanan bit her lip because she almost laughed out loud. She felt really good about Shang Guandandan. Firstly, Shang Guandandan could suppress Sunangziu. Secondly, the little queen mother was really weird and cute. And Nuan ran in at this time. Just when she threw her arms around Lu Chang'an's neck to knock him to the ground, she noticed something strange about Qin Yanan next to her. What's going on? Did you reinflate her? And Nuan looked at Qin Yanan, who had recovered in surprise. Even though it was covered with a big bath towel, the air leakage looked different from the one in the hot spring pool. The appearance in front of her made Nuan feel even more in danger. It turned out that the slimmer look was similar to Nuan's figure, just a little taller. The fat look now was what Nuan hated the most. Why does a woman look like this? Isn't it good to have a little bit of a flaw? For example, the waist is thicker, the legs are shorter and thicker. I heard that thick legs are less likely to cause diabetes. Isn't this good? Just like Nuan, it is not so perfect, so it is perfect. I didn't inflate her because Qin Yanan was actually awake, she just felt embarrassed and didn't want to open her eyes. Lu Chang'an found it funny, her figure can't be made artificially. Why can't it be done? Maybe it can be done very well, Nuan said unconvincingly. What her boyfriend meant was that Qin Yanan's figure was impeccable. It was almost a rebellion. And Nuan bent over and looked at him, letting him see the fierce glint in her eyes. Because at this stage, the key to achieving Qin Yanan's height and body proportions for life-size dolls is the supportability of the endoskeleton. Generally, in order to save costs, manufacturers cannot use expensive lightweight alloys or new materials. The most common with the metal frame and the external wrapping material, a doll of this height may weigh more than 60 kilograms. Lu Chang'an pointed to a solid wood cabinet next to him. What are you pointing at the cabinet for? And Nuan had a particularly strong interest and curiosity in this kind of knowledge and asked quickly. The cabinet is a dead object, and it is very difficult for you to move it. But every time I hold you, it is easy. This is not because I am strong, but because you are a living thing, and living things are particularly labor-saving to use, Lu Chang'an said, patted Nuan again. And Nuan suddenly became angry and accused Lu Chang'an, "You, what nonsense are you talking about, that I am alive and dead? I tell you, if you hug me, I will never move. What's motionless? Where did you think you were? I was just talking about hugging you, nothing else." Lu Chang'an liked to see Nuan so angry and had to maintain her pure and girlish appearance. I wasn't thinking about anything. Nothing. What I meant was that if you picked me up, I would remain motionless and I wouldn't cooperate with you, and Nuan quickly declared loudly. Lu Chang'an laughed. And Nuan saw him laughing and knew that he didn't believe her statement at all. She became angry and rushed over and hugged Lu Chang'an's neck. She lowered her head and opened her mouth to bite Lu Chang'an's head. "I will bite you to death." Ouch. And Nuan was about to fight with Lu Chang'an when a moan came from the side. And Nuan quickly turned her head and saw Qin Yanan opening her eyes. "Teacher Qin, she's awake." And Nuan said to Lu Chang'an in surprise and joy, and quickly let go of Lu Chang'an's neck. "If it were me, I would wake up after listening to you moaning and beeping all the time," Lu Chang'an praised, saying that it was Nuan who saved Qin Yanan. I am." Qin Yanan's eyes were confused, as if he didn't know what was going on. He looked down at the bath towel on his body and reached out to lift it off. "Teacher Qin, you just fainted in the bathroom," and Nuan quickly explained. Seeing Qin Yanan about to lift the bath towel, she quickly stood in front of Lu Chang'an and reached out to hold Qin Yanan's bath towel. Qin Yanan just made a feint of lifting the bath towel. Seeing the look in Nuan's eyes, Qin Yanan finally regained her authority to suppress Nuan. "This is an old problem of mine. It's nothing serious. It's a muscle spasm. It looks like the whole person has shrunk a bit," Qin Yanan explained to Nuan. "Oh, that's it." Nuan didn't think much about it. She couldn't really think that Nuan was a doll that became a spirit, Anyway, there are so many weird diseases in human beings, so this is not the strangest disease. For example, Professor Lu has unexplained physical symptoms, which are much stranger than Qinyanen's. Your ability to talk nonsense is as good as mine. Lu Chang'an laughed in admiration. Muscle spasm, not bad. You know it again? You know it again? You know it again, and Nuan reminded Lu Chang'an seriously, Teacher Qin's physical condition must have been checked since it is an old problem. Do you know better than the doctor? Lu Chang'an, don't talk nonsense with An Nuan, Qin Yanan warned. She didn't want An Nuan, a little girl, to know about her affairs anyway, although she wanted to know that An Nuan learned that she and Lu Chang'an had been raped by Sunangzi. What will be the reaction after the assassination, but let's forget it. These things are too complicated and have gone beyond the scope of jealousy. Teacher Qin, do you still need to go to the hospital? And Nuan ignored Lu Chang'an, bent down, and carefully pulled Qin Yanan's bath towel here and there. No. You guys go and have a rest. I'll be fine if I get up and take some medicine. You guys go out first. Qin Yanan was actually a little embarrassed. She wouldn't feel embarrassed if she was alone with An Nuan or Lu Chang'an, but standing with two people in front of her, she was the only one covered with a bath towel, which was quite awkward. Okay, call us if you need anything. An Nuan quickly pulled Lu Chang'an out. Since Qin Yanan is fine, Lu Chang'an shouldn't stay in this room for another second. As soon as the door closed, Qin Yanan grabbed the towel and stood up. Lu Chang'an must have done it on purpose, comparing her to some kind of doll. You saw her pretending to be dizzy and refused to wake up, so you must be teasing her on purpose. You also said that others were motionless, so you were embarrassed. You yourself were motionless at first, but it didn't affect you and Sumei at all. This bastard brother. An Nuan and Lu Chang'an walked out of the room. An Nuan breathed a sigh of relief, glad that nothing big happened tonight after all. But her eyes became aggrieved, and she pursed her lips and looked at Lu Chang'an uncomfortably. I feel like there are circles of green holy light on my head. And Nuan hummed, you don't know how many spring lights you have seen. The spring lights you have seen have all turned into green lights on my forehead. Green light. Is this considered green? Then you are already a green universe. Lu Chang'an waved his hand. There is a sentence in Gibran's Sand and Foam, the reality of the other person is not in what he reveals to you. I know, it means that the essence of a person is the side he has not revealed to you. Khalil Gibran is one of Professor Liu's favorite literary giants. Sand and Foam is a book that every high school student will read and recite in both translation and original text. Many of these sentences are classics, and An Nuan is certainly no exception. One day, you will know that your essence is a green universe, filled with cuckolds I gave you. Each cuckold is a planet, and they form galaxies, filling your green universe. Lu Chang'an thought about the number of universes that might exist. Maybe such a universe really exists. After all, only humans can't imagine it. There is no world that is impossible to think of. Then I will explode, the Big Bang, and recreate a universe without cuckolds. No, I will collapse into an unprecedented super black hole with the mass of a universe, and swallow you in. Look, you created the cuckold universe. What's awesome is my super black hole. An Nuan hummed, showing that she was very powerful. Girls are not suitable to compare themselves to a super black hole. Lu Chang'an laughed out loud when he saw the blush on the innocent girl's face. You're done. You, the sewer master of the universe. And Nuan started to serve Lu Chang'an again with traditional fists and bites. Actually, I think that many people nowadays are unclear about the meaning of the word green. It seems that men and women are not a blank slate and have no past experiences. Being together does not count as green. Actually, I think that it doesn't matter what happened before they got together. Only when one of them cheats on each other after they are together does it count as cuckolding. Lu Chang'an hugged the beautiful girl in his arms. Do you still think that you are a cuckold in the universe? Yes, and Nuan actually didn't really care about what happened just now. He took things first. If Qin Yanan needed artificial respiration, chest compressions, etc., and Nuan wouldn't blame him. Saving people is such a big deal, who would be so narrow-minded? Crazy. And Nuan stopped hitting people. She said coquettishly that she was the incarnation of the cuckold universe while biting Lu Chang'an. She liked biting people and kissing him. Lu Chang'an hugged her gently, smelled the fragrance of her hair, moved his cheek to stop her from kissing him on the cheek, and asked, "Don't you dare to sleep with Qin Yanan again tonight?" Yeah, and Nuan was still acting coquettishly. "Then sleep with me," Lu Chang'an suggested reasonably. And Nuan was stunned for a moment before she realized that although Qin Yanan's suite was large, it actually only had one master bedroom. The side bedroom had been converted into a study room, and a guest room had been turned into a cloakroom. Now there was only one guest room. "No. You have gone too far today, and I am even a little bit impure," and Nuan quickly pushed Lu Chang'an away, her eyes shy, as agile as a bird singing in the spring rain. He actually made such a request, and Nuan's heart beat very fast. It's the same as when I skipped class with Lu Chang'an for the first time. Every time he does something bad, he takes it with him, and today he wants to take Anyuan to another terrifying adult world. I am very happy. I am with him every first time. I am very grateful. I have no regrets in this life, but this life is very long, and Nuan is not ready yet. Unless he is so forceful, and Nuan cannot resist and is moved by him with tears in her eyes. That's only possible if you succeed. Okay, you go to bed, I'll deal with it on the sofa all night. Lu Chang'an regretfully hugged the quilt and put it on the sofa, then fell down, posing like a willow leaning against Xiao Feng, and looked towards Nuan curled her fingers. Nuan ignored his coquettishness and bent over, giggling and covering her face before running back to the guest room. "Why do you still say that you are a pure girl and cannot move?" "But, I really like it. I'm really immortal." Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 492. Sao, Su Zhen's version of Yandui Wenjiao Dao Niu Zi has an annotation. Ma Cha Chong means that Ellie is wearing Pinrose clothes, and generally refers to the passionate interest between lovers. Because they are lovers, Lu Chang'an likes Nuan very much regardless of whether she is flirtatious or sullen. However, this has nothing to do with Nuan wearing Qin Yanan's pajamas. Girls are such lovely creatures. Men always like girls. Lu Changzin was satisfied and felt more and more that he was an ordinary and normal man. Otherwise, how could he like the girl who ran into the room so much? At this time Nuan ran out again, ignoring Lu Chang'an, picked up a bunch of pillows on the sofa and put them aside, put a pillow on it, kicked Lu Chang'an and ran back to the room. Lu Chang'an lay down with his hands on the back of his head, ignoring the night light in the living room. He opened his mouth and took a long breath before closing his eyes. He was still thinking about whether to go to Elephant Trunk Wo Mountain tonight. The original plan was to take Qin Yanan with him, but now that Nuan is here, of course it won't work. Who knows if the little girl will have a sudden idea to check the post in the middle of the night? This possibility was too great, so he had better go alone. When Nuan got up and saw that he was not on the sofa, he just went to Qin Yanan's room to take a look. After a while, a slight sound came from Qin Yanan's bedroom door. Lu Chang'an opened his eyes when he heard gentle footsteps approaching. Qin Yanan changed into her nightgown, and her whole body seemed like a voluptuous beauty made of condensed shadows, with sharp curves and graceful curves. The skirt was slightly transparent, and the light and shadow shimmered under the night light, revealing the color of her skin. Qin Yanan, who has regained her figure, has a plump beauty that is difficult for girls to achieve, which is a symbol of desire that often only exists in imagination. "Why, can't you sleep?" Lu Chang'an can understand that no one who has experienced such a change as air leakage can sleep peacefully. After all, Qin Yinen's true state of mind is that of a 25-year-old woman. Even if she had some memories of Yesigen, it did not become the capital to consolidate and strengthen her state of mind. Hearing Lu Chang'an speak, Qin Yinen turned on the floor lamp next to the sofa. I thought you went to sleep in the guest room. Qin Yinen cast a teasing glance at the direction of the guest room and felt a little reassured. Although Lu Chang'an and An Nuan are boyfriend and girlfriend, some things are bound to happen, and Qin Yinen has nothing sad or unacceptable, but this is her place after all. She was tossing and turning in the bedroom alone, unable to fall asleep. They were in Yunyu in Wushan next door. She could only listen to the spring rain in the small building all night, and couldn't fall asleep. How could she still lay out low papers and make grass in a diagonal way, with her thin breasts playing with tea by the clear window? Can't the posture come out? I must knock on the door and ask them to keep their voices down, so as to embarrass everyone. I think so. Lu Chang'an also glanced at the direction of the guest room expectantly. Qin Yinen didn't like this look from him. Just now he deliberately flirted endlessly with An Nuan in front of her, knowing full well that she was just pretending to be dizzy. Qin Yinen folded his hands in front of his chest, not minding that the orange light of the floor lamp fell on the snow-colored skin, which was particularly attractive, just like the setting sun reflecting on the snow-capped mountains, and the sun shining on the golden mountains of Male Mountain was just like this. Brother, are you really so keen on this kind of thing? Logically speaking, there are thousands of women who have had sex with you. What kind of women have you not experienced? Qin Yinen was a little embarrassed to say it. But this question has been lingering in his mind for too long. Why can he really be interested in young and beautiful girls like ordinary men? Shouldn't he be detached from the mundane world and face all pinks indifferently like a master, treating them as skeletons? Because I am a human male. In many cases, a human's mood, desire, and impulse are not expressions caused by rational aesthetics and taste, but are determined by endocrine. As a male, the various glands in his body are functioning normally, no different from ordinary human males, so why is it so hard to understand that I will always like young and beautiful girls? Lu Chang'an pointed to the bookshelf behind the sofa. You read the humanities, there are too many books on society, and I prefer to look at things from the perspective of human nature, psychology, environmental impact, etc. In fact, many times you can get a good perspective by looking at human problems simply from the perspective of physiological needs and animal behavior. Qin Yinen knew that she should not ask him such questions. He was always able to explain questions that should be more or less shameful or embarrassing so confidently, but he never cared about the fig leaf. His words were a little more subtle. A fair lady, a gentleman likes to be brave. To put it bluntly, it means thinking with the lower body. But the key question is that Qin Yinen doesn't dislike him thinking with his lower body, but your lower body's thinking direction is too single, right? This is a bit unreasonable. So, this is still an excuse. How can a man who really thinks with his lower body let go of the stunning beauty next to him? Qin Yinen does not think that she is the most perfect fairy in the world like Zhu Huntang does, but in her self-perception, adjectives such as stunning in the world are not excessive. Not to mention her appearance, her figure is comparable to that of An Nuan. Thinking this way, this kind of analysis is just because Qin Yinen is analyzing the problem objectively. As far as her own rationality is concerned, she does not expect anything. The relationship between her brother and sister is very good, and it does not need other behaviors to change or become destructive. Okay, I understand from what you said. If I have any problem, it must be that I haven't read enough books. Qin Yinen stood up according to the hem of her skirt. I'm going to bed. I'll see Shang Guan tomorrow. Dandan, it would be better if you were driven by endocrine and ran to the Anyuan room and made less noise. You can wear noise-canceling headphones. Lu Chang'an made reasonable suggestions. Qin Yinen rolled her eyes at him. It's uncomfortable to sleep with headphones on. Good night. Good night. Lu Chang'an looked at Qin Yinen's back, stood up, and turned off the floor lamp. Really, when he got angry, he turned around and left without even turning off the lamp. After reciting Spring River with Flowers and Moonlight Night 10 times at a constant speed, each time for 2 minutes and 20 seconds, for a total of 20 minutes and 200 seconds, Lu Chang'an took off his shoes and left the hotel suite. After running for a few steps, Lu Chang'an's figure rose up from the ground, like a frightened bird in the jungle at night, rushing into the distance under the cover of darkness. Moving forward like a rabbit and a falcon, Lu Chang'an quickly arrived at the foot of the Elephant Trunk Nest Mountain. At this time, the wind blew up, and the moon moved through the clouds. The shadows were clear and the figure was thin. There were grains of gravel under his feet. Lu Chang'an looked around, looking for unusual animal footprints. Judging from the direction of the mutated wild boar that collided with Sunangzio's car that day, Lu Chang'an thought it came from Elephant Trunk Wo Mountain. Later, it was determined that the mutated wild boar was caused by absorbing Lu Chang'an's vitality and blood. Lu Chang'an completely understood that this mutation was due to the side effects of when he rescued Mrs. Karnstein that night. Since there are wild boars in Xiangbai Wo Mountain, there must be a lot of them. You must know that in the suburban mountains around modern cities, tigers, wolves, bears, leopards, lynxes and eagles, the natural enemies of wild boars, are basically no longer seen. We should also be thankful that the top species in the biological chain here is just wild boar. If there is still an eagle, it also absorbs the vitality and blood and mutates, it will be much more powerful than the wild boar. I'm afraid it will be difficult for Lu Chang'an to just jump around, disposed of with one fist. Because the development plan for Ilongbai Wo Mountain has already been decided, although the entire National Forest Park project is progressing slowly, the surrounding demolition work has already been completed. There is no project construction team stationed yet, and the entire area around Xiangbai Wo Mountain looks desolate and inhabited, with rolling mountains and lush vegetation. There are only a few winding roads sorted out by excavators. Looking down from a high place, it looks like a winding road. Long worms. Lu Chang'an planned to make a preliminary observation of the changes in the biological chain of the entire Elephant Trunk Wo Mountain. In addition to wild boars, he also wanted to look at the changes in other animals. Lu Chang'an has not investigated how many wild animals there are in Xiangbai Wo Mountain, but there must be snakes, insects, rats, and ants. It is difficult to judge the behavior of these common land animals after mutation, but those aquatic animals will still live in their original waters due to their dependence on the aquatic environment. For example, after Bai Sohan cultivated into human form, her main activity location was still on the edge of the West Lake, because as a water snake, the water of the West Lake can bring her a sense of security. Unfortunately, Lu Chang'an has never met Bai Sohan. She has eaten a lot of snake meat, so she can accompany him. Not a single sleeping white snake was seen. Having said that, I still envy Su Xian. After all, Su Xian can. Lu Chang'an came to the main peak of Elephant Trunk Nest Mountain, which was the peak where the Dragon King Temple was once built and where Mrs. Karnstein's coffin was later parked on the top. According to the divergence effect, the surrounding creatures closest to the location where the blood drop appeared on that day must be more likely to undergo mutations, and the mutations will be the most obvious, and the effectiveness will gradually weaken. There is a natural lake under the mountain peak, and there are some abandoned farmland around it. It seems that they are preparing to expand the water area of the lake. There is a soil-pressed road nearby that leads directly to the lake. Lu Chang'an walked over, stood by the lake and took off his clothes and pants. Placed it on the shore, and jumped into the lake naked. The water quality of the lake is average. It seems to be formed by the natural accumulation of rainwater and mountain spring water in the valley depression. There is no external connecting water area. There are many magazines in the water, which affects the line of sight. The hazy moonlight penetrating into the water does not have much effect. Lu Chang'an's pupils dilated, absorbing the little light in the dark environment, and capturing the movements of all creatures in the water. Lu Chang'an swam around in the water like a human being. He did not turn his legs into tail fins to increase speed. The water contained the body's feeling, and his activities in the water did not cause any psychological discomfort to him. After all, it was not once spent a long period of life in the ocean. But what was very strange was that in such a large natural water area, Lu Chang'an swam around, but he didn't even see a single fish. There were no traces of shrimps, loaches, or eels. Lu Chang'an groped around among the water plants and reached into the crevices of the rocks. There were no water snakes or crabs. Before Xiangbaiwo Mountain was designated as a forest park, there were still some farmers here. It was impossible to leave such a large area of water without some fisheries. Such a stagnant water was really abnormal. Lu Chang'an cruised in the water for a while, wandering around the entire lake several times without finding any fish, insects, or shrimps. When he was about to swim to the shore, he saw some movement in the lake. Lu Chang'an turned around and swam away. He stopped in the middle of the lake several times and found nothing. At this time, there were signs of mud sinking to the bottom and churning. An undercurrent suddenly surged forward, and Lu Chang'an felt that something huge appeared in the mud. He couldn't help but suspect that the lake had become so dead, maybe it had something to do with this giant. Just as he was thinking about it, the turbid muddy water was dispersed, and a bloody mouth appeared in front of Lu Chang'an, pretending to swallow Lu Chang'an in one bite. Lu Chang'an opened his hands, grabbed the upper jaw of the mouth with one hand, and the lower jaw with the other hand, and tore the bloody mouth into two halves. The lower jaw was completely torn from the body, but the upper jaw was still held in the hand. A crazy force came, and Lu Chang'an was about to sink to the bottom of the lake. Lu Chang'an's legs swung, and suddenly a huge wave surged under the water, and his whole body he rushed out of the water with the monster and landed on the lake shore. Just looking at the appearance, this turned out to be a grass carp more than 3 meters long. Let's call it a mutated grass carp, because although it maintains the shape of a grass carp, its body is too huge, and its mouth has sharp teeth. Looks like a great white shark. Even though half of its mouth was torn off, the mutated grass carp still struggled, exuding a murderous aura. The squirming flesh and blood in its mouth spurted out blood from time to time. Its thick tail fin created a muddy puddle on the shore of the lake, which was mixed with blood, and the lake water was splashed violently. I'm afraid this fish is not delicious. Lu Chang'an saw it struggling like this and smashed its head to pieces with a punch, leaving only the fish's body flapping and twisting on the ground. This vicious guy obviously didn't realize who was the fish. The top of the food chain on this blue planet. There is no doubt that this lake has also been affected by the mutation inspired by blood, and this grass carp has become the final king. All other aquatic animals here, not even shrimps and crabs, fortunately, this is a closed water area. If this thing were allowed to escape into external waters, such as the Xiangjiang River, it would be an ecological disaster, no less than the consequences caused by the stupidity and hypocrisy of the good people who released it. Fortunately, this thing only has one, and it probably has no ability to reproduce. Could it be that, if it's delicious, you're still going to eat it? Lu Chang'an turned around and saw Sun Nangxiu in a lake green skirt standing next to a clump of bamboo on the shore. The bamboo leaves were as green as jade and the beauty was pretty, which was a good scene. My cold didn't go away, but got worse. I spent most of the day asleep. The updates of 2 major chapters have been temporarily postponed. I'm really sorry, I overestimated my recovery ability.